Chapter 4097. At this moment, Yi Miyun explained the atrocities upstairs in a few words. The group of people were eating downstairs. He Huan's screams could be heard from upstairs from time to time. It was just as they finished eating. However, Yi Liangxiu was still frightened and looked at his eldest son from time to time. Was this really a love interest? "Mom, let's eat." Mr. Yi smiled and then said to his little girl, "Share, give Mom a piece of her favorite." Tang Share replied with an "oh." In fact, she was only 2 years younger than him, but she was still as obedient as if she was 18 years old. She obediently took a full bowl of food for Yi Liangxiu, ensuring that her mother-in-law would not be able to speak again during the meal. Yi Liangxiu looked at her son helplessly and amused. Only Share would be trained like a little pet by him. However, this was also good. At least, her eldest son should not be as interesting as Qin Mo. Upstairs, He Huan was really tortured badly. Her hands were tied with a tie by Qin Mo, and she was tortured by him. She screamed and cried that it was painful. He pinched her chin and kissed her fiercely. His voice was even more unbelievably low. "Do you also feel pain? You can't feel pain. Your heart can only beat for him. He Huan, I'm just a photo to you, right? In fact, I'm nothing. I'm nothing even though I've made you like this." He was in a mess, and he didn't even know what he was talking about. He only knew how to possess her. She was his wife, his woman. He had liked her for so long, and she had a heart of stone. When He Huan was about to be unable to bear the pain, she lay on the pillow softly and cried, "Qin Mo, let me go." His eyes were as deep as ink. He looked at her quietly and stopped all the plundering. He blinked his dark eyes and asked in a low voice, "Let go of your body or your life, He Huan." She laid there, her tears dripping onto the pillow. She thought that even if she said she loved him, he wouldn't believe her. Moreover, she didn't want to say it. She just whispered, "You know." Qin Mo chuckled. "Really? Then I want to see how you can leave me without my consent and how that person can survive." He Huan's face was pale. She almost lost her voice. "Qin Mo, you can't." "Why can't I?" He hooked her chin. "Why can't I deal with a man who seduced my wife?" He didn't. He Huan closed her eyes. Her long eyelashes were wet with tears. Her face was as pale as a sheet. Qin Mo looked at her, and his voice suddenly became tired. "He Huan, is it hard to stay with me?" Qin Mo looked at her, and his voice suddenly became tired. "He Huan, is it hard to stay by my side?" He thought that she had understood their feelings for each other for so many years. But later, he found out that she used him as a photo, because the person she liked couldn't smile at her or talk to her anymore. He thought about divorce, and it was ridiculous. But as the years passed, he couldn't bear to give up. He looked at her, his wife. Suddenly, he felt a lot of pain. She was lying in a mess, and there were traces of him ravaging her body. Qin Mo reached out to cover his eyes. He suddenly took a coat and threw it on her. "Go take a shower. I'll take you back later." Jiuqian Shenwang. Chapter 4098. He Huan didn't move because it was painful. Qin Mo stood by the window alone and smoked 2 cigarettes. He turned around and saw that she was still lying there with her eyes closed. He didn't know if she was asleep or not. He just leaned there and watched quietly, feeling a stabbing pain in his heart. He didn't want to hurt her, but he had never been in her heart. She could even give up on He Huan. How much she couldn't stand this marriage that she didn't even want He Huan. Yi Huan. Qin Mo felt bitter. When she gave birth to Yi Huan, he had been so happy to have such a name. Qin Mo cared about Yi Huan. However, she might have never thought about it and didn't care. All she wanted was freedom. He could endure it when she was abroad, and he could wait for her to change her mind. However, she was asking for a divorce now, because that man had woken up. Qin Mo felt a sharp pain in his heart. He sat by the bed and gently caressed her face. Yi Huan woke up instinctively. He looked down at her and asked in a low voice, "Does it still hurt?" Her fair arms were bruised, accusing him of his brutality. Yi Huan buried her face in the pillow and didn't want to talk to him. Qin Mo sighed and said, "I'll wash it." "Qin Mo," she finally said, "I'm not willing to accept a date every time we fight." She sat up slowly and put his coat aside. "We're in the past. Qin Mo, it's a problem between us. It has nothing to do with anyone else." He stood there and When he heard this, he smiled coldly. Whether it's related or not, I've already stepped in. He bent down and looked at He Huan. I won't cause trouble for him as long as you don't divorce me. You know how to make me happy and how to make me unhappy, huh? He Huan glared at him. Qin Mo is despicable. It's not like you've known me for the first time. His fingers slowly stroked her chin. There was a faint bruise on He Huan's chin, which was caused by him. His tone was also slow. Aren't you despicable? Don't you know what kind of feelings you had and what kind of motive you had to climb into my bed and marry me? Since you provoked me, don't think of giving up halfway. He Huan slapped his hand away with disgust in his eyes. Qin Mo, don't be so infatuated. Don't you know very well what you've done? Qin Mo clenched his fists. Those women were just playing around. I never really touched them. Is that so? He Huan smiled faintly, with a hint of mockery and bitterness. She didn't even want to admit that she liked him. She just wanted him to think that she had never loved him. At least when facing him like this, she wouldn't feel so embarrassed. After saying that, she wanted to go to the bathroom. However, her arm was caught by Qin Mo. He frowned and stared at her. Speak clearly. He Huan looked down. I can't. Between us, there's no need to speak clearly. If President Qin is unhappy, he can use violence, right? His breath hurt as he stared at her. He Huan smiled faintly. She endured the pain and got off the bed to go to the bathroom. Just as she turned on the water, Qin Mo came in and said faintly, Let's shower together. She wanted to reject him. However, he pushed her against the wall and touched her face with his slender fingers. Did I hurt you just now? Chapter 4099. He Huan turned her face away. She did not want to talk to him. Qin Mo turned her body around and looked at her carefully. He said expressionlessly, Let's do it again. He Huan was stunned for a moment. Then, she could not help but say, How shameless can you be? We are husband and wife. If you don't do it with me, who will you do it with? After saying that, he kissed her and pressed her against the wall. The bathroom wall was a little warm because of the hot water. It was not cold, even when she was pressed against it. However, He Huan felt cold all over her body. It was probably a high fever. She thought to herself, but she did not care if she was sick. Anyway, he would not let her go if she was sick. He would rather torture her even more miserably before sending her to the hospital. He Huan did not say a word. Let him do it. Anyway, he would let her go when he was satisfied. Her head became heavier and heavier, and her body slowly became soft. Don't faint. He found her lips and kissed them. He kissed her forcefully. However, He Huan still could not help it. She fell into his arms. Fortunately, there was a doctor at home. Qin Mo went down in embarrassment. He called Qin Shun to go up and check on He Huan. Qin Shun was stunned. Everyone below was stunned. Yi Lianxiu was the first to go up. Then, Qin Shun and Qin Mo went up. Qin Anlin looked at his most outstanding eldest son and said with a cold face, You fainted. What kind of fun is this? Yi Mian stood up and said, We have to ask Qin Mo if he did not control it well. He picked up Tang's share and said, Okay, let's go home. His little heart was a little worried about He Huan. We don't want to wait. Yi Mian looked up and said, It's just that Qin Mo is too rough. It will not be a big problem. Tang Shui nodded and followed him obediently. As soon as the couple left, Qin Anlin sighed in his heart. His eldest son was really born into a different family. When he was young, he went to the Tang family and wanted to be half a son to Tang Yu. He was only 12 years old, but he already knew how to chase his wife. Now, it seemed that his wife was as obedient as a little girl. Qin Anlin sighed and looked upstairs. His second son, on the other hand, was doing well in his career. He was also a famous figure in City B, but his weakness was He Huan. Since it was not convenient for Qin Anlin to go up, he took care of He Huan. He Huan's eyes widened, and she asked worriedly, What's wrong with Mom? I'm not feeling well. Qin Anlin comforted the little fellow, but I should be fine soon. Qin Huan bit her lips and asked softly, Did Daddy hit Mommy? Oh, He Huan said, Then it must be very painful. Oh, little E said happily, Then it must be very painful. Yes, Qin Anlin said. While they were talking, Qin Shan checked He Huan upstairs. He Huan was wearing a bathrobe, and Qin Mo must have helped her put on. Yu Yangxiu stood aside, feeling a little worried. She looked at her son with a blaming look. Qin Mo didn't have much expression on his face, but his eyes were anxious. Qin Shin straightened up. It's not a big problem. She just caught a cold and exhausted. She will be fine after some rest and medicine. Then she looked at her brother. Don't be so rough in the future. Ihuan is not even 160. As for Qin Mo, he was 184. Thinking about it, she felt sorry for her sister-in-law. Qin Mo was so strong when he was crazy. Qin Shin thought for a moment. Don't wake her up if she is asleep. I'll give her a shot to reduce her fever. Also, control yourself for the next 2 days. If you treat her well, she won't go abroad again. In a chapter, hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 4100. Qin Mo stood there quietly. After a while, he smiled bitterly and said, I want to treat her better, but she doesn't need it. Qin Shin quickly inserted the needles, and Yu Yangxiu went over to take care of him. The siblings walked out together and went to the study. Qin Shin couldn't help but say, if you love her, why can't you use the normal way? Your marriage will affect Ihuan. The normal way? Qin Mo walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and said, are you going to persuade me to divorce her? Qin Shin paused for a moment and said, no. She walked over and stood beside Qin Mo and whispered, I know you love Ihuan very much, but brother, you should give her some time to breathe. Haven't I given her enough? Qin Mo's voice was hoarse. Chen Shun, I often feel powerless. Sometimes I want to let go, but in the end, I can't do it. I don't want to, but more than that, I don't want to let go. I know that if I let go, she will really fly away and never come back. Now, there is still Ihuan. She will come back once or twice a year, and we are still husband and wife. You blame her, and you hate her. Qin Shun let out a long breath and said, brother, have you ever thought that Ihuan must have liked you before? Otherwise, she wouldn't have given birth to Ihuan. If it was just for your face, you know how unique she is. Qin Mo tilted his head and stared at Qin Shun. After a long time, he smiled bitterly and didn't say anything. He stood there and smoked. He was thinking, did Ihuan really love him? If she loved him, why couldn't she wait to leave him after that person woke up? Why could she be so cruel after so many years? Qin Mo quietly smoked 2 cigarettes and looked at Qin Shun. It's fine here. You can go back. By the way, how is Su Mo? Qin Shin chuckled. Were you concerned about her, or were you concerned about your money tree? Qin Mo rolled his eyes. Is there a difference? She'll be discharged tomorrow. Kang Xiao is much gentler to her than you are to Ihuan. Brother, women need to be coaxed. Don't always use your authority as President Qin to pressure her. Ihuan won't fall for it. Besides, it'll be hard for you to explain it to Uncle He. Qin Shun patted his second brother's shoulder. I'll go back first. Ihuan is fine. Qin Mo nodded slightly. Qin Shun said goodbye to his parents and drove back. Qin Mo returned to his bedroom and was scolded by his mother in a low voice. If you bully her like this here, I don't know what will happen when you go to your home. Ihuan will be staying here these days. As for you, before Yu Liangxiu finished, Qin Mo interrupted, of course I'll be staying here too. Yu Liangxiu looked at her son. She disagreed, but there was nothing she could do. After giving him a final warning, she went downstairs to take Ihuan. Qin Mo sat alone and quietly looked at Ihuan on the bed. Ihuan's little face was a little pale. He reached out and touched it. It was still a little hot. Qin Mo lay beside her and didn't dare to sleep. He quietly watched over her and then carefully wiped her with warm water. He was indeed not gentle. Her delicate body was covered with the bruises he left. His face was slightly red as he looked at her. As he wiped her, Ihuan suddenly woke up. Her black eyes opened to a slit as she looked at him silently. They had quarreled and quarreled before, but at this moment they stared at each other and seemed especially calm, as if those quarrels had never happened. End of chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 4101. Qin Mo spoke first. Are you hungry? I'll go downstairs and get something to eat. Ihuan pursed her lips and nodded after about half a minute. Because of this nod, Qin Mo's heart seemed to be hit by something. He pressed his palm on the blanket and smiled. Good girl. It was a very touching moment. His expression was also very gentle, completely different from the fierce look he had on her in the bathroom. Yi-Hwan looked at him as if she didn't know him. Chin-mo put his finger on her head. "It's okay, it's not too hot. I'll go get the food." Yi-Hwan's lips moved, but she didn't say anything in the end. Chin-mo went downstairs and Chin-Anlin went to coax Yi-Hwan. Lianxiu was there and saw her son coming down. "Yi-Hwan is awake. I'll go get something to eat." Chin-mo nodded and followed Lianxiu into the kitchen. Lianxiu specially made 2 new dishes while talking to her son. "What do you and Yi-Hwan plan to do? Is she still going overseas?" "No." Chin-mo's voice was a little low. "She'll stay in the country for now. She formed a studio and will probably develop in the country for a long time." Yi-Hwan was very famous in the American film industry and was considered a first-class director. From Chin-mo's point of view, it would be a pity for her to give up the overseas market. Of course, he wouldn't ask her to go overseas. He wanted her to stay, but he was afraid that she would stay for someone else. Lianxiu put the dishes on the plate and passed it to him. "Communicate well. Yi-Hwan is going to school soon. Do you want her to watch you fight? How is it noisy?" Chin-mo said calmly. "I'm going up. You should sleep early too, Mom." Lianxiu nodded. "Okay, you too." Chin-mo looked at his mother and took the plate upstairs. He pushed open the bedroom door. Yi-Hwan seemed to have fallen asleep again. He walked in quietly and put the tray aside. His voice was a little hoarse. "Yi-Hwan, get up and eat." She had just mentioned food, but now she buried her face in the pillow. "I'm not hungry." He stared at her helplessly and bitterly. There was clearly a gap between them, but he couldn't help but treat her well. His voice was a little hoarse. "All right, I'm up." As he spoke, he pulled her out of the quilt and put her against his side. "Shall I feed you?" Yi-Hwan woke up immediately. She opened her eyes and said in a low voice, "I'll eat it myself. You can put it in the living room." Chin-mo stared at her for a while and finally agreed. He let go of her and brought it over. Yi-Hwan put on a coat and got out of bed. She was still a little dizzy, so she sat down and exhaled. Still uncomfortable, he sat beside her and put his hand on her forehead. Yi-Hwan was not used to this kind of intimacy, so she gently broke away. "A little, it doesn't matter." She probably didn't have the strength to quarrel with him because she was sick. Chin-mo's eyes flickered slightly, but he didn't say anything. He just put the rice in front of her. Chapter 4102. After a long time, Chin-mo finally left and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Actually, he wasn't satisfied yet, but he couldn't do it tonight or for the next few days. We lifted the blanket and laid beside her. Yi-Hwan seemed to have woken up for a while. She instinctively wanted to move back, but he held her waist and said in a low voice, "Don't move, I won't touch you." As he said that, he felt a little bitter. He laid flat and whispered, "When you're better, you can go anywhere you want. Just 2 things are not allowed to see him," and he lowered his voice even more. "And remember to go home." Yi-Hwan's body was against him, lying quietly beside him. He didn't know if she heard him, but he knew that she heard him. She stayed by his side and pretended not to hear him. She had always pretended not to know that he loved her. He suddenly turned around and pulled her slender body into his arms, hugging her tightly. Yi-Hwan said hoarsely, "You said you won't touch me." Chin-mo buried his face in her neck, and his lips touched her delicate skin. Yi-Hwan ran around all day and didn't take care of herself, so he didn't know why her skin was still so delicate. She was very beautiful, but her body was thin. Her skin was fair. He felt that he couldn't take it anymore and said in a low voice, "Yi-Hwan, I'm your husband." Hugging is a common thing between husband and wife. Let's go to sleep. Yi-Hwan felt uncomfortable with his entire body buried in her neck. She was very hot, so she struggled. "I want to drink some water." Chin-mo moved. "I'll get up and pour it for you." He supported himself with one arm and went to the living room to get a cup of warm water for her. When he came back, he sat at the head of the bed and helped her up, wanting to feed her. Yi-Hwan refused. "I'll drink it myself." But Chin-mo insisted, so she leaned on his shoulder. As long as she looked up, she could see his beautiful chin and deep facial features. Chin-mo was a very good-looking man with a cold and masculine temperament. He was different from that person. Why did she feel that they were similar? As she thought about it, she took small sips, after drinking. Qin Mo's voice was a little hoarse. Lie down and take a nap. He put the glass aside and flipped her over, his hand touching her from behind. What are you doing? He-Huan was a little scared. She gasped and reached out to grab him. Qin Mo stared at her. What are you thinking? I'm just checking if you're sweating. As he spoke, he put down her clothes and helped her to straighten her body. Seeing her close her eyes and sleep, he was not sleepy at all. He wanted to smoke, but when he saw her sleeping face, he could not bear to leave. Just like that, the night passed. He-Huan woke up at dawn, drenched in sweat. His body also felt relaxed, as if he had been reborn. Qin Mo was still asleep. She took the opportunity to look at him carefully. Looking at his furrowed brows in his sleep, she thought that he must be unhappy with a wife who ran around outside all day long. He-Huan smiled gently, but it was a bitter smile. After that incident, she really could not lie in the same bed with him every night and pretend to be a loving couple. Seeing him once or twice a year was already too much for her. If he said that she liked someone else, then so be it. He-Huan sighed and wanted to take a shower and change her clothes. But as soon as she moved, he pressed her down on the bed. She looked up and saw Qin Mo's dark, ink-stained eyes. This time, were you going without saying goodbye again? He stared at her, and his voice was tense. Especially when his Adam's apple moved slightly, it was full of dangerous masculinity. Chapter 4103. He-Huan turned her face away. I'm going to take a shower. He stared at her as if he was making sure that she wasn't lying. After about 10 seconds, he let go of her, turned to the side, and got up. As he got dressed, he said, There's a meeting this morning. You stay at home and rest. I'll come to pick up your He-Huan in the afternoon. He-Huan sat on the bed. Her lips moved, but she didn't say anything in the end. Qin Mo tied his tie and looked at her. Didn't you say that we're staying? If we stay, we'll naturally live together. We'll take He-Huan home ourselves. He-Huan straightened her body a little. Qin Mo's voice was a little hoarse. If you think our relationship isn't strong enough, we can have another child. He-Huan shook her head. I don't want to have a child. He walked over, leaned over, and gently touched her lips. Then be obedient. You can do whatever you want, but don't do anything that will make me unhappy. He-Huan looked down. Do you have to be so bossy? He paused for a moment. Unless you don't want to see He-Huan again. As he said that, he straightened his body and walked towards the door without any hesitation. He-Huan was so angry that she threw a pillow at him, but it hit the back of his waist. The pillow fell to the ground. He turned back and stared at her for a while, but he still picked up the pillow and put it back gently. He-Huan glared at him. Qin Mo didn't want to do anything at first, but looking at her, he couldn't help holding her shoulders and kissing her. She was shocked and punched him. However, her punches brought out his ferocious nature. He pressed her onto the bed and kissed her passionately. When she refused, he tore off her pajamas and bit her shoulder forcefully. He-Huan let out a low gasp as if he was about to breathe. Qin Mo bit her so hard that it almost bled. After a long time, he buried his face in her shoulder and said in a low voice, Heartless little thing. He-Huan's heart was touched. He held up his handsome face again and stared at her. He-Huan bit her lips and didn't say anything. She didn't care about the bite marks on her body either. Qin Mo, on the other hand, helped her adjust her clothes and smiled. Next time, I'll bite you like this. If you don't behave, I'll torture you. Let's see if you'll behave or not. As he spoke, he got up and looked at her again before he left. He-Huan was unwilling to look him in the eye, so she turned her face away. Qin Mo's eyes darkened. He left without saying anything. The meeting this morning was really important. When he went downstairs, he bumped into his mother and smiled. Morning, Mom. Lianxiu looked upstairs. How's He-Huan? It's pretty good. They don't have a fever anymore. I'll pick them up tonight. Qin Mo drank a mouthful of milk and said lightly. Since her son had said so, his mother couldn't say anything else. She only told him to give in to He-Huan. Since he cared about her, why didn't he treat her better? Qin Mo was stunned for a moment. He smiled and didn't say anything. When he went to the company, the secretary had already put the meeting materials in front of him. He flipped through them. Did Kong Qiao come to the company today? The secretary smiled. I heard from his assistant that he won't come until tomorrow. He has something important to do today. Chin Mo snorted. Suemo was discharged. He shook his head. He's obsessed and doesn't care about his future anymore. The secretary was his confidant. Ruan Yun picked an artist from the company's trainees. It seems that she wants to train him again. President Chin, do you want to ask her? Let's talk about it after he becomes famous. Chin Mo said lightly. He didn't care too much about Ruan Yun. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 4104. In the hospital, Suemo was sitting on the bed. Today was the day she would be discharged. Kong Xiao had gone to handle the discharge procedures, so she was sitting alone, feeling a little bored and speechless. He was busy as if her affairs were his, but she didn't need him to do that. At this time, when Yuan came over with a bouquet of flowers in his hand, Suemo looked at her and said, "What flowers did you buy?" "Roses." When Yuan put the flowers in her hand and smiled. "I didn't buy them, Kong Xiao bought them." With that, he put the flowers in her hand. When Yuan was stunned, he looked at the flowers in his hand and couldn't come back to himself for a long time. Kong Xiao stood at the door and smiled. "Let's go home." Suemo raised her eyes and looked at him quietly. There was a hint of loss in her eyes. He walked over with a smile and picked up the luggage. "Okay, let's go back." When Yuan drove here, Suemo wanted to take his car, but Kong Xiao took her into his car after putting the luggage away. Suemo was stunned for a moment, but she still got in. Kong Xiao drove a Bentley Mulsanne. When the car drove out, there were even a few fans standing at the entrance of the hospital asking for Kong Xiao's autograph. He stopped the car and rolled down the window to sign for them. Of course, a few fans also saw Suemo and whispered, "Kong Xiao, is this your girlfriend?" Kong Xiao signed the autograph and handed it over with a smile. "Yes, she's my girlfriend." "Wow, can we take a photo together?" The fans took the opportunity to ask. Suemo wanted to refuse, but Kong Xiao had already unfastened her seatbelt and took her to take a photo with the fans. It wasn't until the fans left that she glared at him. "How can you do this? If they post it, who said that I can't find a girlfriend or get married?" "Suemo, it's 2019 now." He smiled nonchalantly and helped her buckle her seatbelt. His actions were very intimate. Suemo turned her head and ignored him. "Do you like the flowers?" He continued to drive. "Although pink roses don't match your age, I think pink roses are better for the first time. Girls will like them." Suemo wanted to throw the flowers away, but the car window was opened, so she closed it in embarrassment. A faint smile appeared on Kong Xiao's face. It was a joyful expression. "Kong Xiao, when I get home, you leave. In the future, don't come here." She pursed her pale lips and said softly. Kong Xiao's fingers tapped on the steering wheel. "Are you that cruel?" Suemo bit his lip. "We are nothing." "Then, if you give me a status, or if I give you a status, it shouldn't be a problem, right?" "Cohabitation shouldn't be a problem," he said softly. She didn't say anything. Anyway, she would go back to work after she recuperated, and they wouldn't be able to see each other. However, Suemo didn't expect that when she went back to her apartment, Mr. Kong was busy cooking. Kong Xiao carried her luggage and closed the door with one hand, while Suemo just stood there. Teacher Kong came over and said warmly, "You're back." Kong Xiao quickly takes Suemo to rest. "Teacher Kong, why are you here?" She actually wanted to ask him how he had the key to her house, but if she couldn't ask such a question from an elder who cared so much about her, she would be too ignorant. How could Teacher Kong not know? He pretended to be ignorant and smiled. Kong Xiao said that you're going to be discharged. He said that your body is weak and needs nourishment. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 4105. Teacher Kong continued, "I was thinking that it's not hygienic to cook outside, and it's too tiring for you to cook yourself. So, I decided not to come over. Suemo, don't be jealous of Annie's cooking." Teacher Kong automatically categorized herself as an Annie. She was happy that her son was finally willing to get married. Whether or not they wanted to have children was another matter. It was up to them. Teacher Kong said that it was better to spend a few years with the two of them. How could life be wasted on having children? How could Suemo say no to Teacher Kang's words? She smiled and went to the sofa to rest. Wen Yuan came over too. After greeting Teacher Kong, he helped Su Mo tidy up the room and found an excuse to leave. Su Mo didn't even have time to scream. She was like a small fish on a plate, being fried by Kong Xiao anxiously. Watch some TV and lie down after eating. I'll peel an apple for you. Kong Xiao bent down, his voice gentle as though he was spitting into her ear. Su Mo looked up. He smiled and walked to the kitchen. Teacher Kong heard it and took out a big red apple to wash. Kong Xiao took it over and washed it. As a mother, she said, I'm thick-skinned enough to help you chase after your wife. Don't let me down. Kong Xiao smiled. I'll sleep here tonight and give birth to a big grandson. Teacher Kong spat. Su Mo has just recovered. You beast. Can't you wait? This was a rare, open-minded conversation. Kong Xiao smiled and cut the apple into 4 pieces. He passed one to Teacher Kong. Eat some before cooking. Teacher Kong took a bite and found it sweet. Then, he continued cooking. In the living room, Su Mo felt uneasy. It was clearly her own home, but with Kong Xiao and his mother around, they made her feel as though she was a guest. She felt uneasy, as though she was sitting on a needle. Kong Xiao came over and sat beside her. Why aren't you watching TV? Su Mo lowered her voice. When are you leaving? He stuffed a piece of apple into her mouth and wrapped his arm around her shoulder. I told my mom I'm not leaving. I'll sleep here tonight. Su Mo's eyes widened and she glared at him. Kong Xiao, he smiled and pinched her cheek. I'm lying to you. You believe me? Su Mo was still staring at him. Anyway, you have to leave after eating. Kong Xiao didn't say anything and just stared at her. Su Mo turned his head away and ate his apple fiercely. He smiled and leaned over. I'm going to see what my mom cooked. When Kong Xiao got up, Su Mo was still eating the apple, biting it hard. She felt a little confused. This scene seemed to be a family of 3. Kong Xiao went to the kitchen to help his mother. His cooking skills were not bad, so it was a waste of his talent to help his mother. Mrs. Kong was also very happy. It had been a long time since she had been so close to her son. She lowered her voice and said, Are we being particularly unkind? Mom, if you don't have a thick skin, how can you get a girl? You don't know how difficult it is to get Su Mo. Look at her these days. Has she been touched? Kong Xiao was a little depressed when she thought of how Su Mo used to call her a bitch. Kong Laosher only smiled. He picked up the pot and made a pot of delicious chicken soup. He also steamed the shredded white fish and stir-fried 2 other dishes. Kong Xiao brought the pot over. Su Mo stood up and said, Let me serve the rice. At first, Kong Xiao refused. But after thinking about it, he smiled. All right, end of chapters. Chapter 4106. Su Mo felt that he was acting strange. When she went to wash her hands, she called Wen Yuan. Wen Yuan, are you really not going to eat with us? The atmosphere here is weird. It's like meeting your mother-in-law. On the other end, Wen Yuan smiled. Su Mo had finally come to this realization. She didn't say anything and only said, Teacher Kong is a very nice person. Yeah, it's great. It's too great. Su Mo muttered softly. Then she told him to drive and come over to keep her company when he was free. Wen Yuan nodded and hung up the phone. He went to Yi Mubai's company to have dinner with him. Yi Mubai came back from the drive and was surprised to see Wen Yuan in his office. Secretary, he smiled. Wen Yuan didn't want me to say it. Yi Mubai rolled up the documents in his hands and tapped Wen Yuan's shoulder. Are we eating here or out? Wen Yuan saw the faint exhaustion on his face and smiled. Let's eat here. Just eat what you usually have. You don't have to do it on purpose. Yi Mubai turned around and said something to Hina. Secretary, he nodded. Just wait for a while. After that, she went out to do it. Yi Mubai took off his coat and threw it on the sofa. He loosened his tie and sat next to Wen Yuan. How is Su Mo? Why aren't you eating with her? Wen Yuan glanced at him and sighed. It's not my turn to be there with Teacher Kong Xiao. Don't you think it's weird for me to keep her around? Yi Mubai smiled and put his arm around his wife's shoulder. Look at how jealous you are. I'm not jealous. Wen Yuan was furious. He was still smiling. I'm the one who's jealous, okay? I can't stand seeing other people in love. He leaned in and bit her ear. Mrs. Yi, when are we going to be in love? Wen Yuan patted his handsome face. Be serious, Secretary, he will come in at any time. She doesn't dare to. She knows that I will fall in love with you at any time. CEO Yi smiled happily. He restrained himself and only kissed her on the cheek. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something. Oh, right. Did you know that Wan Yun is no longer Kong Xiao's manager? She has chosen another male artist to be her manager. Looking at his hot looks, I can't deny that Wan Yun has a good eye for talent. When Yuan looked at him for a long time before he said in a low voice, it was because of Sumo Kankyo that they ended their collaboration. Yi Mubai threw her a look. What do you think? When Yuan was not sure at first, but now he was sure. After a moment of silence, he said in a low voice, Kong Xiao and Sumo are very suitable. Actually, they're both lonely. I've said it before. One of them is a demon, and the other is an angel. They complement each other. Yi Mubai rubbed her face. But you didn't believe me. When Yuan looked at him, not many of your words are true. I love you. That's true, he said suddenly. When Yuan, do you want to do this? Fortunately, Secretary, he pushed the door open and came in. In his hands were a few wooden bento boxes that looked very exquisite. Secretary, he placed it on the table. Enjoy your meal. After saying that, he ran away. Because CEO Ye's hand was still on Wan Yuan's waist, she didn't dare to continue watching. Eat. Yi Mubai opened the box. Wan Yuan took a look. The dishes inside were probably made by the chef in the villa they used to live in. She looked at him. Yi Mubai smiled faintly. I knew you were coming, so I made an extra set. End of chapter. Chapter 4107. When Wan Yuan was eating, Sumo had already finished eating. Kong Xiao saw her put away the bowl, so he immediately got up. I'll help you to your room to rest. Sumo refused subconsciously. No, I can walk by myself. Kong Xiao didn't force her. Okay, you sleep first. He sat down and continued to eat with his mother. Teacher Kong always felt that the mother and son were a little unkind, but for his happiness, she could only be thick-skinned. She finished eating and said softly, then I'll go first. I'll come when I'm needed. She always had to give him some private time. Kong Xiao nodded and sent her to the door. He wanted to say something, but didn't say it. Teacher Kong thought for a moment and said, Kong Xiao, Sumo is a good girl. If you are together, you should cherish her. You're not young anymore. You know what I mean. Kong Xiao felt a pain in his heart and nodded gently. Teacher Kong was a little relieved and left. She still had classes in the afternoon, so she had to take care of Sumo when she was not there. Kong Xiao closed the door and wanted to smoke, but he gave up after thinking about it. He went to clean up the dishes, wash them, and carefully washed his hands. Then he quietly walked into Sumo's bedroom. She was asleep, probably because she hadn't come back to sleep for a long time, and she didn't sleep well in the hospital. She was particularly heavy at the moment. She didn't wake up when he came in. Kong Xiao didn't want to take advantage of her, but he was a mature man after all. After confessing his feelings, there had been no opportunity to get close to her. At this moment, she was asleep. He quietly walked over and sat down gently. His fingers touched her face uncontrollably. After a while, he uncontrollably lowered his head and kissed her. The kiss was shallow and slowly, unable to satisfy him, he gently pried her lips open. His superb skills made Sumo feel very comfortable in her sleep. At first, she passively endured it, and then, when he withdrew, she discontentedly hugged his neck. Her red lips slightly opened, and her voice was hoarse. Kong Xiao, what's wrong? Then she also woke up. When their eyes met, Sumo's face was a little red. She bit her lips and looked away. Taking advantage of me, she looked at her watch and secretly thought that Teacher Kong had left. So, she revealed her true nature and kicked Kong Xiao. Kong Xiao didn't dodge, and this kick happened to hit old Kang's descendants. You really are. He bent over and covered the place where he had kicked. He slowly laid down to catch his breath. Sumo was also frightened. It couldn't be that something bad had happened to him, right? She did not want to be forced to take responsibility. Just as she was about to lean over to ask, her waist was grasped by his palm, and she fell onto the soft bed. Kong Xiao then covered her. He carefully propped himself up so that he wouldn't crush her. He clasped her fingers tightly so that she wouldn't have a chance to escape. His voice was hoarse, so cruel. As he spoke, he kissed her soft lips. It's just that I didn't satisfy you by being so heavy-handed. Enrich. The corners of Sumo's eyes were wet as she was trapped by him. She bit her lip and said, "Let me go. Kong Xiao, what are you doing?" A look of hurt flashed across his handsome face. After a long time, he said in a low and hoarse voice, "I just care. I just want to be with you." Sumo, are you saying that those who have missed you are not qualified to love? She struggled again, but she couldn't break free. She didn't want to get herself injured because of an argument. Besides, he couldn't really do anything to her in her current state. So, she softened her body. Anyway, it's not you. In a chapter. Come and read the latest chapter. Chapter 4108. Kong Xiao looked at her and smiled faintly. How is it not me? Besides me, who else do you want to be with? Jimo's face was still on the side. Suddenly, Kong Xiao took out a piece of paper from his pocket and stuffed it into her hand. This is the betrothal gift, he said. Sumo was a little confused. She picked it up and thought it was a property certificate or something, but when she took a look, she was stunned. It was nothing else but an HIV test report. Kong Xiao smiled slightly. Negative. You don't need to check again in the future because there won't be anyone else. As he said that, he kissed the tip of her nose and rubbed her neck. Now, do I have the right to be with you? Sumo was speechless. She was angry and amused at the same time. She was afraid that he would act recklessly, so she put her hand on his shoulder. That's not how it works. Kong Xiao's eyes darkened. He kept staring at her and called her name. Sumo, I'm not young anymore. I've long passed the age of impulsiveness. I really want to be with you. Sumo was silent for a long time before she whispered, I can't give you anything. I only have a home of love, and it depends on money. I can help you. Kong Xiao whispered, I don't want you to work so hard. She stared at him for a long time before she whispered, Kong Xiao, this is a huge trap. People like you don't do things that are disadvantageous. Let's forget about us. I remember how well you've treated me these days, but feelings can't be expressed just by being touched. What about the body and flesh? He looked at her with a burning gaze. I want you, what about you? He knew that she didn't have a man, and maybe she didn't want to have a man. There was always a need, right? Sumo was shocked by his words and couldn't make a sound for a long time. Later, she reluctantly said, This has nothing to do with you. Kong Xiao's thin lips covered her ear. We can try. This time, I will be loyal. She didn't dare to believe him, or she didn't want to believe him. Kong Xiao's eyes fell on her face. After a long time, he said in a hoarse voice, Sumo, I won't give up. Let's live together first. You can test me. As he said that, he leaned over and kissed her. His voice was a little vague from now on. She moved a little clenched, but he held her wrist even more tightly, and his voice was low and hoarse. Don't be afraid. I won't really come unless you're willing to sit on me. What happened next was a bit hard to explain. Sumo never knew that Kong Xiao didn't mind doing it for a woman. No matter what, Kong Xiao decided to stay here. In the first few days, Teacher Kong would come over to cook from time to time. Later on, she didn't come at all. Anyway, Kong Xiao knew how to cook. After a week of recuperation, Sumo had put on some flesh. Her face was no longer as thin as before and looked a little rounder. She sat on the sofa watching TV, holding an apple in her hand, which was peeled by Kong Xiao. She was so focused that she did not notice that Concho was sitting beside her. He was dressed in his home clothes, and some of his things had been moved over. Sometimes when there was an important event, he could go back to his own place to change, but the place was still too small. He had told Sumo more than once, but she refused to move in with him. Kong Xiao did not say anything. He sat beside her and reached out to pinch her face. He smiled and said, What are you watching? A variety show. Sumo's eyes were still glued to the TV, and she did not move away. Chapter 4109. Kong Xiao was a little dissatisfied, so he picked her up and put her on his lap. Sumo wriggled a few times. Kong Xiao, what are you doing? Kong Xiao held her waist and put his face against the soft flesh behind her ear. You really don't treat me as a man or a nanny? Suemo bit her lip. I'm watching TV. He kissed her, and his voice was a little hot. You can continue to watch TV. It won't get in the way. He caught her by the waist, turned her face towards him, and kissed her, unable to restrain himself. Suemo bit his lips. I can't watch TV anymore. I was wrong. He chuckled. Let's go back to the bedroom, huh? Saying that, he carried her in his arms. Suemo struggled in his arms. No, I want to watch TV. I want to do it. He whispered in her ear. After so many years of service, you have to give me some benefits, right? If I continue to endure it, it will break. Sumo's face was a little red. Her fingers hooked around his neck, and her thin fingers rubbed gently on his slightly thick and hard muscles. She didn't say anything, seeing that she acquiesced more than she resisted this time. Kong Xiao went back to the bedroom and kicked the door. He stumbled to the bed while kissing her. Sumo's dress was very convenient, so he got it up in a few seconds. But Kong Xiao hesitated for a moment and said in a hoarse voice, Do you have that here? Suemo was confused by his teasing, but she stopped at this time and grabbed his hair impatiently. Kong Xiao? He asked again with a smile. Suemo turned her face aside. Why do I have that kind of thing here? Kong Xiao kissed her. Wait a minute. I'll go buy it. Suemo bit her lip and looked at him. It's so late. Forget it. How could Kong Xiao forget it in such a situation? He got up, tidied up his clothes, and went out with his wallet. Suemo lay on the bed and let out a long sigh. He was really serious. In fact, there was another way. At this time, he was not here, and Suemo was alone, so she could calm down and think about it. These days, he was good to her and serious. She felt, so she did not resist living with him, but only to let him into her life, and she was not ready to enter his. She was still holding back, afraid that she would be hurt. She told herself to stay like this for the time being. Not getting married and living together was actually very good. Perhaps in a month, half a year, or a year, Kong Xiao would naturally leave when he felt tired. Then she could move somewhere, change everything, forget about him, and start over. Just as Suemo was thinking this, Kong Xiao returned. There was a faint sound at the door, and then Concho closed it. His steps were quick, as though he could not wait to enter. Suemo leaned against the side of the bed. At the door, he took off his coat, then his belt in a hurry. When he covered her, he nibbled on her soft lips and whispered, I haven't had a woman for almost half a year. Am I very obedient? Following that, there was only chaos and an impatient Yuan. Both of them had been single for a long time, and they had been in love before, so there was no need for words. He always cared about her body and did not dare to enjoy it too much. He only dared to let her go after 2 times, but he was not enough. He went to the bathroom to take care of himself, and then came back. Suemo was a little tired and fell asleep, lying quietly. It had been a few months since they last had sex. This time, she did not regret it. She just regarded it as a man and a woman having sex. Chapter 41:10. Kong Xiao knew what she was thinking, but he didn't say it out loud. He changed into a bathrobe and lay down beside her. Shall I take you to wash? Suemo turned her body sideways and rested her face on his shoulder. No, I just want to lie down. Kong Xiao thought for a moment and leaned over to look at her belly. He was relieved to make sure that the operation was fine. He lay down and looked at Suemo. Are we officially living together? Suemo opened her eyes and looked at him through a slit. Kong Xiao smiled and kissed her. Let's go to sleep. She buried her face in his arms and smelled his nice scent. She vaguely asked herself if she regretted it. In the end, she didn't. Suemo thought that's it. He wanted it, and she was willing to give it to him. As for what she wasn't willing to give, it was still the same. From that day on, Kong Xiao and Suemo were living together. He never avoided the fact that he had a girlfriend, and he didn't hide the fact that this person was Suemo, probably because of the image of a good man. Kong Xiao's popularity soared again. Many people were waiting for him to make an official announcement. Kong Xiao refused the hype because Suemo was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. He just posted a back view on Weibo and wrote, She is very ordinary, but I like her very much. It should be a lifetime. A lifetime was a very serious word. Even artists didn't dare to use it lightly, let alone a very popular one like Kong Xiao. But he used it, and he confessed it. Kong Xiao's fans were excited. Later, they dug out the photos of Su Mo's discharge. Su Mo's identity as the sister-in-law of a king was confirmed, and her identity was also dug out. It turned out that she was the founder of Home of Love. For a time, Kong Xiao reached the highlight of his career. Fans collectively asked Kong Xiao to replace Bai Jingting as the spokesperson of Home of Love and be Su Mo's husband. Kong Xiao didn't say anything, but Bai Jingting expressed his willingness to partner with Kong Xiao as the spokesperson and contribute to Home of Love. This wave of popularity was very good. Fans said that the artists of Stars Entertainment were no better than those of King Entertainment. In the end, they really did shoot a group of promotional videos together. Then, the fans who shouted for the Kong and by CP shouted their throats. The entertainment circle and Weibo were lively for several days. When Su Mo and Wen Yuan met up, Wen Yuan smiled. "Do you want to go shopping? I'm not afraid of having my husband snatched away by a woman, but I'm most afraid of having my husband snatched away by a man." Su Mo bit on his straw. "Then, the three of us will be together. You're making their beds." Wen Yuan hit her and scolded jokingly. Su Mo laughed. "As long as they are willing, I have no problem with that." Wen Yuan propped up his chin. "How does it feel to be the center of attention?" Su Mo smiled and said, "I don't feel anything else, but the Home of Love has received a lot of donations, which is pretty good. It could be considered as using celebrities to hype things up." She did collect a lot of money. She sat on the sofa and calculated with a calculator. When Kong Xiao came back, it was already 9 o'clock at night. He took off his coat and put it over her head. He then took her little account book and looked at it. With just a glance, Su Mo laughed and pulled the clothes off his head. "Kong Xiao, you're too hateful. You've accepted so much money, yet you won't let me take a look?" He smiled. "Where's the money?" "What money?" Su Mo threw his coat aside. "It's from the Home of Love." Kong Xiao still smiled. "At least buy me a few clothes and treat me to a meal. I'm the one who pulled this wave of traffic, and I even sacrificed my reputation to be with Bai Jingxian. You're the one who's eating the cradle. I'm a little puppy." Su Mo snorted. Chapter 4111. Kong Xiao looked at her for a long time before he smiled. "Even if it's an old cow eating young grass, it's not Bai Jingxian. It should be you." Su Mo rolled her eyes at him and packed up the things. "Have you eaten?" Kong Xiao was a little surprised. She had been indifferent to him these days. Why would she care about his meals? Su Mo waved the things in her hand. "Didn't I say I would treat you to a meal? I'll cook for you." Kong Xiao pulled her over and pressed her directly on his lap. His thin lips moved to her neck and rubbed. "I'm hungry. I'll cook for you." She patted him. "Put me down." But Kong Xiao didn't let her go. He still held her waist and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm hungry." Su Mo looked at him. His eyes were very clear, which was a man's unique desire to make love. She thought that he didn't touch her in the past few days. As for the reason, it was because her period came and ended today. How did he know? Sumo's face suddenly turned red. She bit her lips and stared at him. Kong Xiao chuckled. "I saw you drank cold water." After that, he couldn't help kissing her neck. "Go to the room. The sofa is too hard for you." He picked her up. Su Mo struggled a little. "I want to eat." "Do it once. I'll cook for you." He nibbled on the tip of her nose. He carried her into the bedroom and kicked the door. Su Mo was put on the soft bed by him and sank deeply. She bit her lips and hit him. "Kong Xiao." Kong Xiao absent-mindedly grunted and began to work quickly. At the critical moment, Su Mo refused. Panting, she hugged Kong Xiao's neck and did not let him come. As she spoke, her hot breath blew on Kong Xiao's neck. "You're really with me. If there's anyone else, clean up and get lost." He grunted again and then lifted her up. Face to face, he gently nibbled on the tip of her nose. "You're willing to let me scram? If I scram, who will cook for you? Who will serve you? Will you be so satisfied?" As he spoke, he lashed out at Su Mo, making him unable to say a single word. But that was not all. He leaned over and kissed her chin. asking her vaguely if she felt comfortable. Suemo was tortured badly. He didn't know how to control himself, so she scolded him for being shameless and a jerk. Kong Chao laughed happily. She meant what she said. After she finished, she said in a low voice, "Let's do a few more times after dinner." Suemo no longer had the strength to pay attention to him. He turned his face away and kicked him. He smiled and did not get angry with her. He took a tissue and helped her to clean up. He did the same for her and kissed her. "I'm going to cook." "Hey," Suemo called out. Kong Xiao was a little surprised. "I thought you didn't want to talk to me." Suemo sat up and leaned against the headboard. She looked weak and beautiful. She looked at him and then looked around. She said softly, "Kong Xiao, you really don't have to stay here every day. My place is too small. And you, I know you're used to living in a big house." They were actually not suitable for each other. What Kong Xiao longed for was really different from what she longed for. Kong Xiao quietly looked at her. After a long time, he smiled lightly. "Okay, you move with me. I'll leave." Suemo sighed. "Why do you have to do this?" Kong Xiao's voice was low. "I won't change what I said. I hope you won't change it either." End of this chapter. Chapter 41:12. After saying that, he walked out. After a while, Suemo heard the sound of cooking coming from the kitchen. Kong Xiao was a good cook. It was probably a habit he had cultivated in the past. The taste was also very good. She thought that there was probably no one else besides his mother who could enjoy such meticulous service from him. In fact, she should be moved, but she just felt that something was missing. Suemo got out of bed. She originally wanted to take a shower, but after thinking about it, she didn't. Instead, she went to the kitchen. Kong Xiao was cooking. She went over and asked, "What did you make?" "Poison," he said a little unhappily. Then, he looked at her and said, "Do you dare to eat it?" Suemo reached out and hugged his waist. This was a very intimate action. From the past until now, she almost rarely kissed him like this. Kong Xiao was a little stunned for a moment. Then his heart palpitated. He liked Wen Yuan for a long time. Of course, it was an extravagant hope, but Wen Yuan's heart belonged to someone else. When he became famous, he already knew that she had Yi Mu Bai in her heart. As for other women, he just indulged in the game of flesh and money. He never thought of letting them have any tenderness and consideration for him. This kind of hug was unnecessary for Kong Xiao. But at this time, when Suemo hugged him like this, he actually felt very comfortable. It was an indescribable feeling. So, his heart softened and his voice softened a little. "Go get a fruit to fill your stomach. Don't starve, or your stomach will hurt again. Do you feel bad?" Suemo hugged him. Her voice was decadent. She wanted to act coquettishly and please him. Kong Xiao tilted his head and looked at her. "Do you want me to peel it for you?" She smiled and let go of his body. But she didn't know that he just had a thrilling experience. Kong Xiao watched her obediently sit at the small dining table and eat an orange. Then, he continued to cook. He guessed that she was hungry, so he made 2 simple dishes and a soup. The taste was very good. Originally, Suemo had eaten enough of an orange, but she couldn't help but eat more when she smelled it. In the end, her stomach was a little bloated. Kong Xiao put down his chopsticks and asked worriedly, "What's wrong?" Suemo bit her lip and said in a low voice, "I seem to be feeling uncomfortable. You eat, I'll go lie down for a while." Happy to let her go. He immediately went over and gently picked her up, heading towards the bedroom. He put her down and said in a low voice, "Did you eat too much, or did I make you uncomfortable?" Suemo blushed and turned her head away. "I ate a little too much." His gaze was deep as he leaned against the bed and placed her in his arms. His voice was a little low. "Eat less next time. Eat when you're hungry." Her stomach wasn't the same as usual. She couldn't eat too much, so it was a little troublesome to feed her. He wanted to bring her to his villa and get 1 or 2 chefs to take care of her stomach. When he was not in B City, he would always worry about her meals and her work. Privately, Kong Xiao felt that Sumo's health was no longer suitable for her to manage the home of love all day long. She often went to get sponsors, so she had to socialize and so on. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. It was just that he couldn't say too much now. He was still on probation here. Suemo leaned against his chest and said softly, "I'm fine." As he spoke, His expression became slightly pained. Kong Xiao immediately tensed up. What's wrong? End of chapter. Chapter 41:13. Suemo let out a sigh of relief. I'll be fine after a rest. Don't go crazy again. Kong Xiao hugged her and covered half of her body with a thin quilt. He carefully rubbed her abdomen to relieve the swelling pain. The night breeze caressed Sumo's face, and he actually felt a little comfortable being hugged and rubbed by him like this. Another special feeling was born in his heart. Her breath was a little humming and her voice was hoarse. That's it. Kong Xiao didn't move and let her rest in his arms. After a long time, he asked her softly, "Are you feeling better?" She answered vaguely and then hugged his neck again. "Don't move. Hold me." His heart softened for a moment. He didn't have any other romantic thoughts and just hugged her wholeheartedly. Kong Xiao had never thought that one day he would be able to treat a girl with sincerity other than when you want. But now, he really cared about her and felt sorry for her. Even if it was a problem, even if it was a fool, he seemed to accept it. Later, he coaxed her to sleep. He knew that she wasn't well. Today was always because of his impulsiveness. Thinking that her body was better, he didn't care about it anymore. Now, he felt a little regretful. She slept soundly, but he didn't feel sleepy at all. He stared at her face for a long time. Tonight, he actually had some things to arrange with her, but he couldn't bear to wake her up after such a scene. He looked at her in the middle of the night and made sure that she was fine before falling asleep. The next morning, when Suemo woke up, Kong Xiao was already up and coming out of the bathroom. She didn't have a changing room here, and he was a very particular person, so he went to the bathroom to change. She opened her eyes and saw him coming over. He was wearing a very formal suit, as if he was going to do some work. Suemo leaned her head on the pillow and asked softly, "Where are you going today?" She thought that he was just going to participate in a show and wouldn't go out, but Kong Xiao said, "I'm going to France for 2 days to attend an award ceremony. I wanted to reject it, but I really can't." She knew that he couldn't reject it because he probably won an award, so she smiled. "That's good." He also smiled. "You're happy too, aren't you?" She grunted. Kong Xiao's fingers gently stroked her face. "I wanted to take you with me, but I was afraid that you would be too tired." Suemo shook his head. She didn't say the words of rejection out loud. In fact, she felt that their relationship was just that of a man and a woman living together. They couldn't even be considered close boyfriend and girlfriend. They just felt that they were not suitable for each other and could leave at any time. Kong Xiao stared at her eyes. She probably realized what she was thinking. Her eyes darkened. She sighed softly and changed the topic. "Stay at my place for the next 2 days. There's an auntie there to cook." "I really don't feel at ease if you're alone." Suemo objected. "I can take care of myself." He stared at her and said very slowly, "I've also told my mother. She's even more worried. Why don't you let her come over and take care of you for 2 days?" How could Suemo bear this responsibility? She glared at him. "Kong Xiao, don't make it so that I have no freedom at all. My body is much better now. If I really don't want to do it, I can order takeout." Just as she finished speaking, he caught hold of her weakness. "Can you still eat takeout with a stomach like yours?" She stopped talking and turned her face to the side. Chapter 41:14. For a long time, both of them were silent. His breathing became heavier. After a long time, Suemo turned back and stared at him. "Don't be like this. You will make me feel like a child who can't be handled. I'm in my early 30s. Kong Xiao exhaled. "You still know that you're in your early 30s. If you could take care of yourself, would you torture your stomach like this?" Suemo didn't know what to say. Kong Xiao continued, "Go to my place, or my mom will come over to take care of you." She didn't want to be so close to him, so she blurted out, "What right do you have to control me like this?" Kong Xiao's happy expression changed a little. He stared at her. "Am I nothing to you? Am I meaningless?" Suemo bit her lips. "I just don't want you to control me too much. If you say that you care about me, I have nothing to say." Kong Xiao's temper wasn't very good. He always made do with staying at her place. Last night, he stayed by her side for half the night, and now she was being so unreasonable. His voice was slightly cold. Suemo, I like you, but don't think that I won't get angry. Saying that, he got up and left angrily. Suemo didn't care about him. When he walked to the door, he paused for a moment, probably waiting for her to say something, but Suemo didn't say anything. In the end, he didn't say anything and went out with a 20-inch suitcase. This Cold War came inexplicably. Kong Xiao was very angry, but Suemo wouldn't be this angry. She didn't think it was a big deal, but he was wrong to think that he could control her completely by taking care of her. However, after angering Kong Xiao, she took good care of her stomach. She cooked on time and didn't go to Home of Love. The next day, Teacher Kong came again. Suemo didn't know that Kong Xiao told her to come, but she didn't have the face to ask. Teacher Kong told her about Kong Xiao's situation abroad and said that she wanted to buy a gift for her. She asked Suemo what she wanted. Suemo was stunned for a moment and then smiled. There's nothing I like in particular. I'm resting at home now, so I don't need anything. Teacher Kong also smiled. She knew that the two of them had a quarrel, but she couldn't do anything about it. She could only follow her son's wishes and take care of him. Teacher Kong left in the afternoon. After eating a good meal, Suemo lay on the sofa, feeling a little upset. She gently placed her hand on her stomach and gently rubbed it. Remembering that Kong Xiao had done the same for her that night, her heart softened. It seemed that when he left, she was quite cold. Suemo let out a long sigh. She felt that she was wrong, but then she felt that she was right. Why did she care so much about him? They were just friends. If she didn't like him, she could just leave. However, Sumo's heart was still a little stuffy, and he wanted to go out for a walk. But as he walked, he bumped into an acquaintance. It was her ex-boyfriend, Lin Minxin. When Suemo put on a set of sportswear and walked out, he accidentally saw Lin Minxin and Ruanyin together in a coffee shop. His appearance had changed, and Suemo could tell at a glance that he had undergone plastic surgery. He had an overly tall mountain root, an elongated chin, and a cut at the corner of his eyes. He did look better after plastic surgery. He could be considered a handsome man, but compared to his natural appearance, he still lacked some of the essence. Suemo stood outside the coffee shop and looked at him quietly for a while. Then, she decided to leave. She didn't expect that the newbie that Ruanyin promoted was her ex-boyfriend. The world was really small. Chapter 41:15. Just as Suemo was about to leave, Lin Minxin saw her and stared at her. Ruanyin frowned. Do you know Suemo? Lin Minxin smiled bitterly. Yes. Then he put down the coffee in his hand. I'll go say hello. He got up quickly and ran towards the door. Seeing his expression, Ruanyin was sure that it wasn't as simple as just knowing him. They must have had an intimate relationship in the past. Ruanyin wasn't in a hurry. She just sat there and waited quietly. Outside, Lin Minxin ran very quickly and caught up with Suemo. He called her name. Suemo. Suemo turned her head and looked at him quietly. She was surprised but also expected. At that time, her family was in trouble, and he left very decisively. He just said that he couldn't afford it. At that time, their relationship was at its best. That day, Suemo sat from night to day. She always thought that he was joking with her, and that he would come back soon to tell her that he regretted it or whether it was true and that he wanted to get through it with her. However, she waited from night to day, but the person she thought she would spend the rest of her life with didn't come. Time waited for no one, and neither did her family in the hospital. She could only wipe away her tears. She worked hard as an assistant to Yimu Bai. Her salary was earned with her blood and sweat. At that time, she told herself that she couldn't trust any man, especially when it came to money. Now, the man appeared in front of her again, looking at her with longing and nostalgia. Suemo felt that it was ridiculous and ridiculous. She looked at the man in front of her quietly and said in a low voice, "Long time no see." Compared to her indifference, Lin Minxin was undoubtedly much more enthusiastic. Although the Suemo in front of him was somewhat haggard and was no longer as young as before, there was still an indescribable beauty between her brows. She was no longer as young and inexperienced as before. He knew that she was with Kong Xiao, but he didn't think that they would last long. Kong Xiao was very popular, and Suemo might just be an appetizer for him. They would break up when they got tired of each other. They were not as pure as they were when they were young lovers. Moreover, he also knew that Su Mo had a good relationship with Stars Entertainment. Although KG Entertainment wasn't worse than Stars Entertainment, there were too many mature artists in KG Entertainment, and he wasn't young anymore. He wanted Su Mo to go to Stars Entertainment, and then they could get married. Besides, the home of love in her hands raised a lot of money in a year, comparable to the income of a celebrity. With such conditions, Lin Minxin naturally didn't care that she had a relationship with Kong Xiao. This was the way of the entertainment industry. If one couldn't even let go of such a small thing, how could one become famous? The man surnamed Lin's thoughts moved again and again. Then, he revealed a trace of nostalgia. I heard that you were sick a while ago. I wanted to visit you, but I was afraid that you wouldn't welcome me. Su Mo immediately said, I really don't welcome you. You're right. Lin Minxin, if you have nothing else to do, just pretend that you didn't see me when you see me on the road. We don't have anything to do with each other. I don't want to implicate you. After saying that, she turned around and left. She didn't miss this person, only a little bit of hatred. He wasn't disappointed. This guy didn't deserve to be called disappointed. He was scum. Lin Minxin was still standing behind her. He said softly, I've been regretting it all these years, and I miss you very much. Su Mo paused for a moment before turning around and saying mockingly, Your acting skills are not bad. You'll be popular in the future. End of chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41:16. Su Mo was speechless. The man who had left first said that he missed her. What did he miss? He didn't want her in the past, but he missed her now. She was afraid that it wasn't her that he missed, but something else. Su Mo turned around and smiled. It's been so many years. There's no need for that, really. Lin Minxin was still looking at her quietly, as if he was reminiscing. Su Mo wasn't a little girl anymore, so she wouldn't do anything to him. She just smiled and wanted to leave, but Lin Minxin grabbed her wrist. Su Mo, wait. She shook him off without thinking and said coldly, We have nothing to talk about. Lin Minxin. The past is the past, and I don't think you're forgetful. His expression was a bit ugly, but he still didn't want to give up. Are you not willing to give me another chance? This time, Su Mo didn't answer him. She just shook her head and walked forward. They were already on their own, so there was nothing else to talk about. Su Mo left, but Lin Minxin was still standing behind her. He called her name again. Su Mo. Not only did she ignore him, but she also walked faster and faster. Lin Minxin didn't know that when he and Su Mo were entangled, Ruan Yin had filmed the scene and sent it to several VIPs. So, 2 hours later, Su Mo and Lin Minxin were trending, and they even bought the top 3 places. The title was related to Kong Xiao. Saying that Kong Xiao's girlfriend had an affair with her ex Ruan Yin was really a ruthless person. She had broken up with Kong Xiao, but she still wanted to eat some blood. When Lin Minxin returned to the cafe, Ruan Yin said, If a reporter interviews you, remember not to mention your past with Su Mo. Just say that you can't forget her, but you just didn't expect her to be with Kong Xiao. Lin Minxin was a bit confused. Ruan Yin drank a cup of coffee and smiled. It's just a normal publicity technique. If you want to wait until you have a new work, I don't know when it will be. Lin Minxin was in his early 30s, so he wasn't young, but he had done a good job. She also lied about his age, so he was 26 now. Anyway, who knew? Lin Minxin was a little uneasy, but he always listened to Ruan Yin. Ruan Yin was a top-notch agent who had helped Kong Xiao develop. Of course, when he was alone, he wanted to return the favor. Wasn't Ruan Yin single? There must be a woman's needs, right? But she rejected him, saying that she didn't want to mess around with artists. However, Lin Minxin knew that she had slept with Kong Xiao in the past. Everyone in the industry knew about it. Lin Minxin thought that Ruan Yin probably wanted to take revenge on Kong Xiao. It was said that women's love turned to hate, and he thought it made sense. 2 hours later, Su Mo's name appeared on the hot search list. Because he was also an artist of KG Entertainment, Qin Mo was a little angry. Wasn't he slapping himself in the face? And he was the clearest about who had done it. Qin Mo called Ruan Yin into his office, and his expression didn't look too good. His secretary quickly left, knowing that President Qin was going to lose his temper. Qin Mo looked at Ruan Yun with a hint of anger on his face, but he didn't hide it. I don't care about what happened between you and Kong Xiao, but you're in the wrong for buying the hot search list to insinuate Kong Xiao. Ruan Yun doesn't use publicity like you do. Even 100 Lin Mingxins can't compare to Kong Xiao. Do you understand? End of chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41:17. Ruan Yun wasn't convinced. I can make him as popular as Kong Xiao. Do you think he can become popular just by looking at his face? Even if he becomes popular, do you think his reputation and status in the industry will be comparable to Kong Xiao's? King Entertainment creates superstars, not little fresh meat. Besides, Lin Mingxin is almost a veteran. Qin Mo reprimanded bluntly. Ruan Yun still wanted to say something, but Qin Mo waved his hand in the air. I don't care if you're upset or not. I just want to tell you that Kong Xiao is someone I want to protect. Don't compare him to an insignificant person. Qin Mo was the boss of King Entertainment, and he had a strong personality. Ruan Yun didn't dare to go against him. She hardened her voice and said, I'll remove the trending topic. There's no need. Let's go. Qin Mo said calmly. Tell Lin Mingxin to be careful with his words. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless when he's frozen. Ruan Yun had witnessed Qin Mo's temper today. He didn't give her any face at all. When she was about to leave, she saw a slender girl about 160 centimeters enter. She was wearing a simple pair of black jeans and a white t-shirt. She had a bag on her back. She couldn't tell her age, but she looked mature and petite. She looked like she was in her early 20s. Hewan didn't look at Ruan Yun when she entered. Instead, she spoke to Qin Mo. I'm going to pick up Yihuan. With that, Ruan Yun knew that she was Yihuan, Qin Mo's wife. Yihuan was an international director, but she rarely appeared in public and kept a low profile. That was why she hadn't recognized her. Ruan Yun paused and deliberately slowed down. She heard President Qin say calmly, I'm free now. Let's go together. With that, he picked up his coat and car keys and left with Yihuan. They closed the door. Seeing that Ruan Yun didn't leave, Qin Mo paused. Ruan Yun, go back and think about what I just said. Ruan Yun nodded and watched them leave. She returned to her office and gritted her teeth. She had never thought that Qin Mo would fancy Kong Xiao so much. Logically speaking, Kong Xiao's status had already reached a certain height, and it was unlikely for him to climb any higher. Right now, King Entertainment should be replenishing its resources. Only fresh blood could compete with young, fresh meat like by Jing Xian of Stars Entertainment. Lin Mingxin was indeed not as good-looking as Bai Jing Xian, but he was unscrupulous and desperately wanted to climb up the ranks. This was very similar to Kong Xiao in the past. This was also the reason why Ruan Yun had chosen him. She asked her assistant, why is Director He here today? He would have been back for some time. She had her own studio and wouldn't come to King Entertainment so easily. She thought that something must have happened. She hadn't been there just now. So maybe Lin Mingxin had missed an opportunity. Being in Yihuan's movie, even if it was just a supporting role, was a big deal. The junior assistant was about to bring up this matter, so she lowered her voice and said, Sister Ruan, Director He is here today to pick actors for a new show. I heard that he picked a young male idol and 2 older actresses. Their acting skills are excellent, but it's not decided yet. A young, fresh meat as the male lead? Ruan Yun didn't believe it. This wasn't Yihuan's doing. The junior assistant laughed. How could that be? The male lead was already decided. Kong Xiao, the big brother of King Entertainment. Chapter 41:18. Then, she suddenly stopped talking and looked at Ruan Yun, not daring to say anything else. After all, Ruan Yun used to be Kong Xiao's manager, and she had earned a lot of commission. Now, she was miserable. This was the reality of the entertainment industry. A capable artist was God. Now that Kong Xiao was favored by Director He, his career would only become more prosperous. She was afraid of offending Ruan Yun, but Ruan Yun murmured, so that's how it is. No wonder President Qin valued Kong Xiao so much. He was Yihuan's favorite. Most people in the company didn't know about the conflict between President Qin and Yi Huan, but Ruan Yin knew a little. President Qin loved Yi Huan very much, but she didn't know if Yi Huan felt the same way. Seeing that she wasn't angry, the junior assistant leaned over and whispered, "They're mainly here for Kong Xiao. The others are like a pack, but it's up to Director He to decide whether to use them or not. Most importantly, Kong Xiao said that we'll use whoever he feels comfortable with." Then, she fixed her eyes on Ruan Yun, waiting for her to speak. Ruan Yun looked at her. Who is the fresh meat? He wasn't even in the top 18. The assistant was a little annoyed. She thought for a moment and said, "But he's young. He can play the young Kong Xiao." Just from this, Ruan Yun knew that Lin Minxin couldn't do it. He was already in his 30s, so how could he act like a young man? She thought about it and said, "Do you know who wrote the script?" The assistant shook her head. "I don't know either." Ruan Yun knew that she couldn't get anything out of her, so she didn't force her. She turned on the computer and wanted to check the internet. At this moment, her phone rang. Her brows loosened. She knew who was calling, and in that instant, it felt like a lifetime had passed. It was Kong Xiao. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the phone to her ear. "Kong Xiao." Kong Xiao's voice was cold. "Ruan Yun, you can deal with me if you're unhappy, but don't do anything to Suemo otherwise. I can't guarantee that I won't kill your new artist and make it impossible for you to stay in KG Entertainment." Kong Xiao wasn't trying to scare her, and she knew that he was capable of doing so. Didn't President Qin make it clear just now? Ruan Yun wasn't someone to be trifled with. Her voice was indifferent as she replied, "I don't understand what you mean. Don't tell me you didn't buy the trending topic. I've worked with you for so many years, and I know your trick's the best. I'll give you half an hour to deal with it, or I'll make sure Lin Minxin can't take care of himself," Kong Xiao said coldly. Ruan Yun was flustered and exasperated. "Have you really fallen in love with Suemo? What's so good about her that she's worth you giving up everything? I'm still me, and I haven't given up on everything. I'm just living in a different way, looking for someone I love." Kong Xiao's voice was still very cold. "You should know that my contract with KG Entertainment will expire in half a year. If I renew the contract and make some requests, do you think President Qin will agree?" Ruan Yun slowly put down the phone. Qin Mo would agree. She had no more value, she knew. Ruan Yun chuckled softly. She had given up so many years of her youth, but in the end, she had lost to a Suemo Concho. He should be dazzling. Why is he willing to be ordinary now? Ruan Yun chuckled softly. Her smile was a little desolate. She had worked so hard for so long, but she couldn't even compare to him once. If it was Wen Yuan, it would have been fine, but Suemo, she really couldn't accept it. Ruan Yun dialed the number and removed the trending topic. But even so, the wave of news just now was enough for Lin Minxin to be in the limelight. Even after removing the trending topic, there were new posts about Lin Minxin being Kong Xiao's girlfriend's ex-boyfriend. Anyway, the momentum couldn't be suppressed anymore. Ruan Yun didn't know what to do at that moment. In the afternoon and evening, the three of them were on Weibo. The reason was that someone had posted a photo of Suemo and Lin Minxin kissing in the past. It was actually very innocent, but the title of the photo was very weird. It was called a bed photo, and Weibo almost collapsed. On the other side, Kong Xiao also noticed it. He clenched his fists. He wanted to call Suemo, but he was hesitant. They were still in a Cold War. If he called her now, it would seem a little weak. Moreover, she was the one who was tugging at her ex-boyfriend. She was infected with the flu and had a terrible headache. She recovered. End of chapters. Chapter 4119. Kong Xiao didn't call Suemo. Instead, he kept silent. Since he didn't say anything, Lin Minxin didn't dare to say anything due to the pressure from Qin and Mo. After a few days, the heat was finally replaced by the news of a young actress having an affair. Kong Xiao hadn't contacted Suemo for a few days. Suemo also thought that they were over. After all, with Kong Xiao's position, he really didn't need to care about her. Sumo went to work in the home of love. When she saw Ms. Kong, she couldn't help feeling a little uncomfortable. However, Ms. Kong was calm, as if she didn't know that the two of them had a conflict. She still brought her snacks and said a few words of concern. Of course, Su Mo wouldn't show anything in front of the elders, so she just said a few words. When she got off work, Su Mo drove home and saw Ms. Kong waiting for the bus at the intersection in front of her. She covered her chest as if she was very uncomfortable, so she quickly stopped the car there and got out to help her. "Andy, what's wrong?" "It's an old problem." Ms. Kong saw her and smiled. "It's okay. You said it's okay. I saw that you were uncomfortable from afar. Let me take you home." Su Mo helped her get in the car. When he started the car, he asked worriedly, "How about going to the hospital?" Ms. Kong refused immediately. "I said it's okay. Really, don't worry about me. I'll go back and take 2 pills. I'll be fine after lying down and resting." Su Mo nodded and looked at the rearview mirror while driving. You can't be like a child who is afraid of getting an injection when she is uncomfortable. Ms. Kong was speechless for a moment. Su Mo knew that she had guessed correctly. She smiled. "You're right. Let's go to the hospital." It seemed that she was about to turn the car around. Ms. Kong said hurriedly, "I'm really fine today. Look, I'm fine now." Su Mo let her go after repeatedly promising her. The car drove out again. She was driving, and Ms. Kong was texting in the back seat. Seeing that she should be fine, Su Mo was relieved. After a long time, they finally arrived at Ms. Kang's home. Su Mo wanted to go back directly, but she was worried. "Ms. Kong, I'll eat here." Ms. Kong smiled. "I'll cook for you." Su Mo liked her very much. He coaxed her, "Let me cook today." Teacher Kong was still smiling as she brought her upstairs. Her place was a little simple, but Su Mo was very used to it. It felt better than staying at Kong Xiao's place. It was very real. As soon as she entered the house, Teacher Kong was busy looking for fruits and food for her. Su Mo went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. "All the ingredients are here. You don't need to go out." Even so, she still made an inventory and ordered some fresh ingredients from the delivery service. After she was done, she put on an apron and prepared to cook. At Su Mo's place, it was very natural for her to cook for Teacher Kong. It wasn't because of Kong Xiao, but because of Teacher Kang's contribution to the home of love. Teacher Kong took care of her when she was sick. She remembered his kindness. While Su Mo was cooking, Teacher Kong made another call and talked for a while in the room. When he came out, he chatted with Su Mo. "Young people nowadays don't know how to cook. Among my students, Wen Yuan is the best cook." Actually, Wen Yuan's family background was the best, but he was not impetuous. Teacher Kong also liked him. Hearing her words, Su Mo grunted softly. Wen Yuan's cooking is quite delicious, but most of it is done by CEO Yi. Chapter 4120. She smiled and Teacher Kong couldn't help but chuckle as well. "You little brat, there's more to your words. You're not happy that Wen Yuan is doing well?" Su Mo had a relationship with her, and now that there was no one else around, she didn't have to hide it anymore. Teacher Kong smiled as well. "It's good, and you're doing well too. I hope you're doing well too." There was a deeper meaning behind those words. Su Mo cleverly chose not to reply, afraid that they would talk about Kong Xiao. She wasn't sure how much Teacher Kong knew about her and Kong Xiao, but she guessed that she was probably a mother, otherwise, she wouldn't have taken care of her. She continued to cut the vegetables and said softly, "Actually, I'm fine with living a normal life." Teacher Kong said softly, "Su Mo, you'll have to get married and have children in the future. Let fate decide." Su Mo said softly, then smiled. "Teacher Kong, aren't you living well like this?" "That's not the same." Teacher Kong sighed and stroked her hair, wanting to say something but swallowing it back down. Su Mo didn't say anything and continued to cook quietly. Teacher Kong looked at the time, looking a little anxious, but he suppressed it so that Su Mo wouldn't notice. Su Mo was done cooking. It was a simple meal of 2 dishes and a soup. When she brought it to the dining room, she said, "I'll make it simpler. I'm not good at cooking main dishes either." Teacher Kong hurriedly said, "That's great. I've troubled you already." Su Mo scooped rice for her and smiled. "Teacher Kong, don't stand on ceremony. It's what I should do. You've taken care of you before, too." Teacher Kong said casually, "Kong Xiao has taken care of you, too. If he's inconvenient one day, will you take care of him, too?" Su Mo froze for a moment before smiling. "He'll always have an assistant and a part-time helper." Teacher Kong sighed. That's not the same. An assistant and a part-time helper are only convenient for work. They're not a comfort to the soul. As she said that, she stole a glance at Suemo and said, I heard that he might be going to film in the future, and he might be gone for half a year. I'm really worried about him being alone outside. Suemo pursed her lips and said softly, he's going to enter the film industry. Teacher Kong paused and sighed. Actually, I don't know much about this, so I'm asking you. Suemo nodded and thought for a moment before saying, I'll ask around for you one day. She could always ask Wen Yuan, and Wen Yuan would definitely ask CEO Yi. She could get some information. However, Suemo was a little confused. Why don't you just ask Kong Xiao? If you were to talk to me about this, I wouldn't be talking to you about this. Teacher Kong sighed softly. Actually, I don't expect him to become famous. I just hope that he can be safe and find someone to live a good life with. Suemo sighed in a low voice. Teacher Kong Xiao actually became very famous a long time ago. Although she did not know, she could estimate that with Kong Xiao's conservative net worth of over $1 billion over the years, if he invested, it would not just be a conservative figure. He would be an A-list male star. Teacher Kong sighed. What's the use of being popular? He's still the same person. Forget it. Let's not talk about him. Let's eat. Just as he said that, someone knocked on the door. Suemo looked at Teacher Kong. Who's coming at this hour? Outside, the sky was already dark. Teacher Kong said, maybe it's Kong Xiao. He said that he's coming over for dinner today. Sumo's heart immediately cursed. Her meal was going to benefit Kong Xiao. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 41-21. However, she thought about it carefully. He had taken care of her for a long time, and a meal was nothing. Thus, she calmed down. Mr. Kong went to open the door. It was indeed Kong Xiao. Kong Xiao seemed to have come from outside, as he looked rather haggard. Black trousers, a gray shirt, and a long black coat. It was simple but very good-looking. When he saw Suemo, he seemed a little surprised as well. Then, he tiptoed in and placed a hand on Mr. Kang's shoulder to greet him. He brought her to the dining table naturally before looking at Suemo and smiling. You're here too? Suemo didn't want to talk to him anymore. She replied softly and looked at him. Get another bowl. Even though she tried her best to look calm, her voice was still a little hoarse and unnatural. Kong Xiao glanced at her and smiled before heading to the kitchen to get a bowl for himself. Mr. Kong looked at the two of them and felt that they were a little awkward, but it didn't seem like they were going to separate. There was still some meaning in it. Mr. Kong looked at Kong Xiao and smiled. I'm not feeling well. Suemo happened to see me on the way. She's doing really well and wanted to send me home and cook for me. Kong Xiao smiled and picked up a piece of meat for Mr. Kong. Mom, you have to thank her properly. Mr. Kong glared at him. What I mean is that you have to thank her. I'm an old man, and I don't know what young people like. This was the first time she glared at her son like this. Kong Xiao fell helpless as he looked at Suemo. Miss Su is kind-hearted and doesn't ask for anything in return. Mr. Kong was furious. His son wasn't like this usually. He was different today. He was clearly here, but it seemed like he was in a fight with Suemo to the end. She really couldn't understand the world of young people. Mr. Kong was so angry that he couldn't say anything. Suemo knew from the start that Mr. Kong was the one who made Kong Xiao come over. Actually, it wasn't that she didn't feel anything when they parted on bad terms. But now that she saw Kong Xiao's attitude, she felt that it was good for them to part. He was getting impatient, and she didn't miss him too much either. She could still live on her own. It was clear that it was good for them to part. She didn't speak and ate in silence. Mrs. Kong and Mrs. Kong didn't talk much either and ate in silence. After the meal, Suemo took the initiative to clear the dishes and left. There was no point in staying any longer. Teacher Kong felt that Kong Xiao was being rude and glared at him. Aren't you going to send me off? Kong Xiao finally looked at Suemo. Let me send you off. Suemo said calmly, No need. I drove here. In the end, her heart softened. She bid farewell to Teacher Kong warmly and even hugged her, telling her to take care of herself. Teacher Kong nodded and told her to come often, but Suemo didn't dare to. After Suemo left, Teacher Kong turned around and scolded his son. You are really infuriating me. What a great opportunity. Don't tell me you were just fooling around. Suemo is such a good girl. Before she could finish, Kan Xiao patted her shoulder. I'll send her off. Teacher Kong nodded in satisfaction. Be careful on the road. Concho made a gesture and hurried down the stairs. As soon as Suemo got into the car, Kong Xiao opened the door and sat beside her. I didn't drive. Can you give me a ride? You didn't drive? Suemo asked incredulously. End of chapter. Chapter 41-22. New wife number 1. Hubby, I'm addicted to spoiling you. Latest chapter. He leaned his head against the back of the chair and murmured, I just got here from the airport. My assistant brought my luggage to my place. I've been flying for more than 10 hours. I haven't slept for 24 hours. I'll take a nap. Then, Kong Xiao went to sleep. Suemo was speechless. She reached out to shake his arm and said, Kong Xiao, get up. You can sleep here. She reminded him a few times, but he didn't seem like he was going to wake up. In the end, he probably thought she was annoying him. So he reached over to unbuckle her seatbelt and dragged her to his side. He did all this with his eyes closed. His strength was so great that Suemo couldn't resist at all. She fell into his arms in a very awkward position. She clenched her fists and pressed them against his shoulders. Kong Xiao. His eyes were still closed, and his handsome face was buried in her neck. His lips were pressed against her soft skin, and his breath was hot on her skin. Her entire body was trembling. If you dare to move again, I'll take you right here, he said. Suemo was furious. She clenched her fists and hit his shoulder. What is this? Kong Xiao, let go of me. He opened his eyes, and when his dark eyes met hers, Suemo was stunned for a moment before she was completely stunned. There was a complicated look in his eyes. There was coldness, desire, and a trace of hatred. She was even more annoyed. What did he have to hate her? Kong Xiao held her waist and said, What's wrong? Didn't you continue your relationship with your ex-boyfriend today? Suemo was dazed for a moment before she understood what he meant. She sneered, What does that have to do with you? But if we're talking about continuing our relationship, it's not an ex-boyfriend, but a current boyfriend. How dare you say that? His eyes were cold, and his Adam's apple couldn't stop moving. He wouldn't tell her that he had taken a bunch of photos of Suemo in the office. Lin Minxin, that scumbag, would definitely not let him off easy. But Suemo didn't know about this, and he didn't want to tell her. However, he was angry. He was angry that she was in contact with someone like Lin Minxin. He was also angry that she didn't contact him and didn't respond to him. Did she really not care? She knew it. Concho's mind was filled with many thoughts, anger, hate, all about her. Now that she said this, he wanted to strangle her. The reason why he was so cold before was because he was angry, but she didn't have a heart. She didn't know, or maybe she didn't love him anymore. Kan Xiao heaved a long sigh. Get off. His voice was cold, as if he had made some kind of decision. Suemo stared at him. He waited for a long time, but she did not get off him. He looked at her and said, Get off. This time, Suemo smiled coldly. Mr. Kong, this car is mine. She opened the car door and said, Get out. However, just as she opened the car door, she was pierced by a flash of light. The large group of reporters outside happened to take a picture of her lying on Kong Xiao's body. His appearance was, well, very warm. Suemo almost jumped up. She quickly closed the door and glared at Kong Xiao. Did you call the reporter? He leaned against the car lazily and smiled lazily. I'm not that bored. Suemo was very suspicious. She climbed onto the driver's seat and said, Get off. How'd I get off now? He whispered, Take me home. Chapter 41-23. Suemo glared at him. Drive yourself if you want to go home. He looked at her for a while more before breaking out into a smile. On his face, there was still a faint trace of exhaustion, but he seemed to be quite happy. Reaching out, he unbuckled her safety belt and dragged her back. The world spun around her, and Suemo didn't know why she switched places with him. By the time she came back to her senses, Kong Xiao had already started the car and said, Buckle up your seatbelt. Suemo glared at him before she went to fasten her seatbelt. She looked ahead and realized that they weren't on the way to his apartment. He seemed to know what she was thinking as he said calmly, "I moved a long time ago. Don't you know?" Suemo didn't say anything in embarrassment. She looked out of the car. At this time, it was already very busy. The street lights were like a long golden dragon from one end to the other. When there was a traffic jam, the car also went from one end to the other side of the sky. Kong Xiao was indeed a little tired. When the car stopped, he turned to look at her. "I'm going to smoke." His voice was rather cold as he took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it up before taking a long puff. The smoke dissipated. He had opened the car window. Suemo shrank back but didn't say anything. She turned to look out of the window on the other side. The traffic was still congested, so congested that it made people panic. Luckily, Kong Xiao only smoked one cigarette before he stopped. He wound up the car window and turned on the music, looking as though he was driving his own car. This was clearly the first time he had driven her car. In the silence, he spoke with a deep voice. "Did you and Lin Minxin bump into each other by chance?" Suemo didn't want to answer his question at first, but for some reason, she replied, "Yes, I saw him when I was walking. He's in Ruan Yun's hands now." After that, she looked at him. "Are you asking me about business or personal matters?" Kong Xiao's beautiful fingers landed on the steering wheel as he looked at her sideways with a faint smile. "Do you want me to ask about work or personal matters?" This kind of topic and way of talking was a little dangerous. Suemo glanced at him but didn't reply. He just remained silent. The car in front started moving and Kong Xiao didn't continue the topic. He continued driving until it was close to 10 o'clock when he reached his villa. What was supposed to be a 40-minute drive ended up taking nearly 2 hours. He stopped the car and tilted his head to look at her. "It's too late to stay here for one night. It'll take at least an hour to get back, even if there's no traffic." "It's not too late." Suemo waited for him to get out of the car before moving over. In the end, Kong Xiao got out of the car, and she moved over, but he held the car door and dragged her out with one hand and held her with the other. When Suemo came into contact with his warm body temperature, he lowered his eyes and said very softly, "Kong Xiao, let go. I said it's getting late. I'll leave tomorrow." He lowered his head and stared at her slightly rounder face. "Or are you afraid? Or are you afraid of playing?" Her voice became lower and lower, until it sounded as if she was being sucked into his mouth. He reached out and caressed her face. Suemo escaped, but this made it seem as if she was moving herself into his arms, allowing him to play with her as he pleased. Under such circumstances, even Kong Xiao couldn't help but smile, his breath hot. "Stay here tonight." With that, he put his arms around her waist and lowered his head to kiss her. End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41-24. At the moment of contact, Suemo's entire body trembled as if she had been electrocuted, but she did not allow him to kiss her deeply. Her lips were tightly closed, as if she had a final determination. Kong Xiao chuckled softly, and the tip of his tongue brushed past her lips before pressing down gently, hinting at her. Suemo bit her lower lip subconsciously and accidentally bit Kong Xiao. His eyes darkened as he stared at her for a long time before he said hoarsely, "I'm going in. Are you going to bite me?" Suemo was speechless and helpless as she stared at him blankly. She could not hear what he was saying and could only hear the rumbling in her ears. When she came back to her senses, she felt a pain in her chin. She instinctively opened her lips, and Kong Xiao kissed her. It had been many days since they had last kissed each other, so the taste was naturally different from before. It was like an electric whip, and Suemo was unable to endure this kind of kiss, so she involuntarily moved back, but Kong Xiao did not allow her to move forward until she was pressed against the car door. The cold car made Sumo's head sober for a moment. She pressed against his shoulder and said with difficulty, "No, not here." Kong Xiao stopped and caressed her overheated face. His voice was hoarse. "Don't you miss me at all?" "No." Suemo bit her lip and glared at him. He chuckled softly. "I know you do." He put one hand through the gap between her and the car, holding her waist and pressing her forward. How dare you say you don't miss me? Their bodies were compatible, and they were an adult man and woman. Moreover, they had done it before, so they could naturally feel each other's feelings. Suemo was a little angry and hit him. Let go of me. She then turned her head to the side angrily. Physical matters have never been a problem. Kong Xiao laughed and sighed. Then you don't mind doing it with me once or twice. With that, he carried her up without a care and walked straight to the villa where he lived. There were two Annies who usually took care of him here. They were originally listening for the sound, but when they saw that Mr. Kong had returned with a girl, they hid and disappeared. So, in the huge villa, only the sound of Kong Xiao's footsteps could be heard. Suemo hit his shoulder hard. Let go. You're a pervert. I'm going to sue you. He looked down. Don't you want to? He carried her into his bedroom and examined her thoroughly in the most extravagant of bedrooms. His body, which had been empty for a long time, naturally ignited with just a touch, and he burned for most of the night. Late at night, Suemo was so tired that he fell asleep. Kong Xiao, on the other hand, was filled with an indescribable spirit after her exhaustion. It was as if all of her vitality had been recovered from her body. He tilted his head and gazed at her. His voice was low and hoarse. Asleep, she did not make a sound and just buried her face in the quilt. Kong Xiao had no choice but to take out some paper towels to clean her up, just like an old maid. He went to take a shower himself. After taking a shower, he was still not satisfied. His body was satisfied, but his mind was not. He walked into the living room and pulled out a bottle of red wine from the wine cabinet. He poured himself a glass, but did not drink it. He just played with the expensive wine glass. She took a cigarette with one hand and sat on the sofa in her bathrobe, looking at the night view outside. However, his thoughts drifted to Suemo, who was in the bedroom. He was still a little annoyed with her. End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 4125. He was abroad. Lin Minxin's affair had been exposed, but she didn't call him. She pretended that he didn't exist. She thought that if she kept quiet, the matter would be over and that Ruan Yun and Lin Minxin would let her off. Kong Xiao raised his glass and drank the wine in one gulp. After that, he poured himself another glass. His gaze shifted from outside to the bedroom, quietly watching the person sleeping in the bedroom. She was in a deep sleep and didn't know anything. She didn't know that after they got together, they had to face everything together. This fool didn't know it all. She thought that he wouldn't look for her after a few arguments. Did she think that they would break up just like that? Kong Xiao knew that it was because Suemo didn't care about him. After being hurt once, it wasn't easy to find that kind of feeling again. His originally angry mood also calmed down a little. He finished the wine in the glass and smoked the cigarette. Originally, he should have immediately returned to the bedroom, but he didn't. He just quietly looked at the night scenery outside. In the past, he was alone. Now, there was Suemo and her loving home. Kong Xiao smiled helplessly and rubbed his forehead with his thumb. He had a headache, but it wasn't really a headache. Compared to Suemo, everything else was really nothing. He smiled and returned to the bedroom. When he looked at her, he walked faster and sat beside her. His fingers caressed her brows, his heart softening. They hadn't seen each other for a while. She didn't miss him, but he missed her. You have no conscience, he murmured, his fingers still caressing her face gently. This touch made him feel aroused again, but he was concerned about her body and didn't do it again. He lay beside her and looked at her sleeping face quietly. Thinking of how anxious she was when she was sick, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. He went forward and gently hugged her in his arms, as if that could give her a sense of security. Suemo didn't know what happened that night. She was so tired that she slept until noon the next day. When she opened her eyes, it was already 11 o'clock. She gritted her teeth and cursed under her breath. She had just sat up when she saw Kong Xiao briskly walking in. His handsome face had a hint of contentment. Suemo glared at him. Why didn't you call me? She had nothing important to do this morning, but she had some things to discuss with Mr. Kong, and they had already made an appointment. If she didn't go now, it would mean that she was too promiscuous last night, and it was with someone else's son. Suemo felt embarrassed. She gritted her teeth and didn't know what to say. She lifted the quilt and wanted to get out of bed, but she immediately screamed, Kong Xiao, where are my clothes? He crawled back into the quilt. Kong Xiao very kindly sat beside her. We did it last night. You said it was hot, so I didn't wear it. Don't you remember? She stared at him suspiciously. I don't have such a hobby. You're not wearing it. He smiled and got up to find a set of clothes from the wardrobe for her. Make do with it. These are the clothes I wore when I was 20. I'm sorry there aren't any women's clothes here. Su Mo refused. Where are my clothes from last night? After she said that, he leaned in dangerously. His masculine scent took over her entire body. Then his hoarse voice rang out. I was too hasty last night. I tore it off. Su Mo wrapped herself in a blanket, her face completely red as she said angrily, Bring the clothes over. End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41:26. Kong Xiao smiled and didn't make things difficult for her. He handed her the clothes and said, I'll wait for your lunch. Su Mo was silent for a few seconds. You go out first. He was in a good mood. After a few steps, he turned back and said, By the way, my mother called me. I said you were still sleeping. Kong Xiao. She was so angry that she threw a pillow at him. He easily caught it and smiled. Do you think she doesn't know that we slept together and that we have done it? He put the pillow on the bed and bent down. She is also very happy. He even rubbed her nose with the tip of his nose and then walked out slowly, which made Su Mo grind his teeth in anger. She immediately put on clothes. They were too big for her at the age of 20, but fortunately, they could be barely worn when they were rolled up. She brushed her teeth and went downstairs. She saw Kong Xiao sitting at the dining table with a goblet in his hand, drinking in broad daylight. She muttered under her breath and slowly sat down. Kong Xiao looked down. Is there anything important in the afternoon? I'm in a home of love. Su Mo was hungry and began to eat. She didn't need to be polite with him. Anyway, it was just a matter of body and body. She just needed to pull up her pants, so she asked, Why do you ask? Kong Xiao said slowly, If there is nothing important, I will go to your place and move my things here. Su Mo paused. I didn't say I would move here. Su Mo. Kong Xiao's voice was a little angry. What do you think I am? Su Mo bit his lips. Nothing, we just slept for one night. You don't think it will last forever, do you? Without waiting for him to speak, she continued. By the way, last night he knew what she was going to ask, so he said angrily, I took measures. Su Mo nodded. That's good. She suddenly smiled and said, Your skills are quite good. Kong Xiao gritted his teeth. She used to mind that he had a woman, but now she smiled and praised him for his skills. What did she think he was? What did she think he was? Kong Xiao's face didn't look good, and he ate with a gloomy face. Su Mo didn't care about him. He didn't call her even once these days, so it was reasonable. He slept with her just because he wanted her to sleep with him, and moved in with him just because he wanted her to. Did she even have any freedom left? Su Mo ate happily, but the more happy she was, the more unhappy Kong Xiao was. The meal was not peaceful either. When she had finished, she went to look for her car keys and bag. Concho was angry and said, Upstairs in the living room. Su Mo directly went upstairs to take his things and went downstairs. He was about to leave. He stopped her. Where are you going this afternoon? Go home and rest. Su Mo snorted angrily. But when she said that, he laughed. Are you afraid to see Teacher Kong? Afraid that she will say that you slept with her son? Su Mo was immediately agitated. It was her son who slept with me. Kong Xiao, you don't have to put the bucket of shit on me. The smile on Kong Xiao's face deepened, right? I was the one who slept with you. Su Mo glared at him, then quickly walked out and slammed the door when he got into the car. Kong Xiao only laughed, treating her as a child throwing a tantrum. He had expected that she would refuse, but he was still a little disappointed in his heart. He had always wanted to live with her and then get married and have children, so he would just leave it to fate. My speed has been especially slow recently. I'm trying to recover so that I can update tomorrow. Momo duh. Good night, everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 41:27. Kong Xiao watched Su Mo leave, quietly watching for a while before looking at her watch. It was almost time, so he took his coat and went out. He drove a Bentley Mulsanne to an office building and took the elevator to a certain floor. Passing through the long corridor, he knocked on the open door. Director he. Inside the office was an 800 square meter office that was divided into many rooms. There was no extra space except for a small tea room at the end of the corridor. Huan was holding a large stack of documents in her hands. She looked at him and said, "Let's talk in my office." Kong Xiao nodded and followed her in. Huan grabbed a staff member. "Make a cup of coffee for Mr. Kong." Kong Xiao smiled. "My mother is a teacher. My surname is Kong, so you can call me Kong Xiao from now on." Huan looked at him carefully and smiled. "I'll call you that directly. As for them, you could train them one by one." Kong Xiao didn't insist and walked in her office with Huan. It was a simple office. A large desk took up almost a quarter of the office. There was a sofa against the wall and a large bookcase. There were no decorations at all. This was Huan's character. Everything was simple. They sat down, and Huan handed him a script. "Take a look at it. If you think it's good, you can accept it. I heard that you don't have a manager now and are negotiating on your own. Is that right?" Kong Xiao nodded. "I've seen a few managers arranged by the company, but none of them are satisfied." Huan smiled. "You want Su Mo to be your manager? Don't forget that Su Mo came from Stars Entertainment. Are you planning to go to Stars Entertainment or pull Su Mo to King Entertainment?" Kong Xiao didn't answer directly. He looked at the script seriously. Huan let go of the previous topic and placed her hand on the sofa beside her. "This movie needs a mature male actor. Previously, I liked Bai the most. After all, you know that he has a lot of acting experience. However, he's no longer an actor. Now, he's Qin Mo's rival. No matter how you look at it, he's not suitable." And now, Kong Xiao was the second best. There was a depth in Kong Xiao's eyes that even Bai couldn't match. This might have something to do with his experience. Kong Xiao had a rough idea and smiled faintly. "Why did you choose me? Is it because you heard about me, so you think I'm suitable?" He had read it once and agreed with Huan. The male lead was indeed suitable for him. Bai's temperament was too clean, but Bai's acting skills could make up for it. After Kong Xiao asked the question, Huan just looked at him and smiled. Kong Xiao calmed down and lowered his head to read the script for about 2 hours. During this time, Huan didn't rush him. Instead, she changed his coffee once. 2 hours later, Kong Xiao looked up at Huan. "I want to know how much you plan to invest in this film. And who are the investors?" Huan smiled. "King Entertainment is fully invested." Kong Xiao put down the script. "Then I can't take it anymore." "Why?" Huan took her cup of coffee, not in a hurry. Because she could see that Kong Xiao was very interested in this film. The only difference now was the matter of money. She pondered for a moment. "Your salary can be set at 80 million. This is the salary of an A-list actor. Kong Xiao, you know that." In a chapter. Chapter 41:28. I'll act for free and invest another 200 million. I want to be an investor with King Entertainment. Even Kong Xiao was straightforward. Huan looked at him for a long time before she chuckled. "Kong Xiao, do you know that you're betraying us by doing this? Would President Qin allow such a thing to happen? That's two different things." Kong Xiao lit a cigarette and took a drag. "I'll invest in the name of the company. You want to get financing after it's done, right?" Huan's expression darkened. "I thought you did it for art. Bai did it for money. Besides, I've never been an actress. I entered this circle to make more money." Kong Xiao held the cigarette and smiled. "Doesn't my prototype fit the character in your script?" Huan sighed. "Let me think about it." If she agreed to Kong Xiao, she would be betraying him. Huan knew Qin Mo's temper very well. Besides, if she let Kong Xiao get out of control, she would be skinned alive by Qin Mo after King Entertainment lost Kong Xiao. Besides, Qin Mo didn't know who wrote the script in her hands for the time being. Huan had a headache. She had always been decisive, but she didn't think it through immediately. Instead, she lit a cigarette and took a puff. "I'll call you when I'm done thinking." Kong Xiao stood up calmly. "Then I'll wait for your good news." Huan felt that Kong Xiao was another Qin Mo. He was very easy to talk to. If someone could act it, she would kick him right now. Huan had a bad temper. She had asked someone to send Kong Xiao off to drive him away. Kong Xiao left and looked at the time. He wanted to see his mother, but then he thought about Su Mo and decided to see her. When he arrived at Su Mo's building, her car wasn't there. Kong Xiao sat in the car and smoked 2 cigarettes. He knew that she had gone to Home of Love and was a little annoyed. Wasn't she tired after a whole night? He thought about it and called Su Mo. She picked up. "Where are you?" he asked directly. Su Mo paused. "Kong Xiao, who are you asking me?" Kong Xiao gritted her teeth. "The man you slept with last night." Su Mo's answer was to hang up the phone. He was so angry that he wanted to call him again, but he was also proud, so he didn't. He didn't leave either. He parked his car there, smoked, and slowly read the script. As they waited, the sky darkened. When Su Mo's car slowly drove over, she saw Kong Xiao wearing a black shirt and a white shirt, sitting in the expensive car, holding a cigarette in one hand and reading something. The further she went, the faster her heart beat, for Kong Xiao looked very handsome. When the car brushed past, Kong Xiao raised her eyes and met Su Mo's focused gaze. To be honest, he was a little tired, but at this moment his gaze seemed to have recovered. All of his unwillingness had completely melted away. Between heaven and earth, there was only pure white like snow. Only him, only Su Mo. Kong Xiao suddenly remembered that night a long time ago, when they had madly made love right here at his car. That night, she had been in such a state of mind. Later, when it was spread online and he misunderstood that she had done it, how did she feel? He looked at her calmly, but under such calmness, there was an indescribable fire in his heart. Kong Xiao opened the car door and got out. End of this chapter. Chapter 41:29. Kong Xiao got out of the car and walked to Su Mo's car. Su Mo stopped the car and turned off the engine, but she didn't get out immediately. Instead, she pretended to be indifferent. "What's the matter? Didn't you sleep enough last night?" "What do you mean sleep? Be more elegant." Kong Xiao locked the car window. "Open the door, or do I have to do it myself?" Su Mo thought for a moment and opened the door. Anyway, he had been doing it all night, so he should be a weakling today. She got out of the car and held her bag in front of her. "Say it. I'm hungry. Let's go eat," he said calmly. And then he took her bag and carried it in his hand. Su Mo was stunned. "Eat? Me? And you? What else?" He looked at her. "I'll eat. You watch." Su Mo stood still. "I mean, why should I eat with you? I want to eat at home." Kong Xiao held her waist and stood still. "Stop it. I'm a little tired and don't want to cook. If you want to cook, I don't mind waiting for another hour." He said it very seriously. Su Mo looked at him and suddenly lost her temper. She went out with him and said after a while, "Why don't you drive? I'll eat at the door. It's very convenient." He smiled, but Su Mo still felt that it was a little strange. There was no fancy restaurant here, only a vegetarian restaurant. The food was good and there were many people. When she was dragged in by him and countless eyes were looking at them, Su Mo wanted to scream. Kong Xiao was a celebrity, a super popular celebrity, but he didn't even wear sunglasses. He was clearly setting her up. So when he ordered, she covered her face with her hands because many people were taking pictures of them. She lowered her voice. "Kong Xiao, did you do it on purpose? What do you mean by bringing you here for dinner?" He took out his wallet and paid for the food. Then he led her to a seat by the window and said casually, "Is it wrong to order a meal with your girlfriend?" "I didn't admit that I'm your girlfriend." She gritted her teeth. "Put on your sunglasses." "I'm not blind." He refused. Su Mo insisted. "You're a celebrity." Kong Xiao looked at her, and when she was a little scared, he said, "But I only want to be your man." "Su Mo." Kong Xiao brought up her previous topic again. "You're not my girlfriend. We're just sex buddies." His voice wasn't soft, and Su Mo wanted to strangle him, but there were so many people around, so she could only endure it. She held her chin in her hand and played with the chopsticks in her hand, waiting for the food to be served. Kong Xiao's gaze became much gentler. "You're still angry?" I didn't even settle the score with you when your bed photos were exposed. What kind of bed photos are those? They're just photos of us kissing. Sumo snorted. Don't you have any ex-girlfriends? You have plenty of them. When she finished, Concho was silent. Sumo glanced at him. As for Kong Xiao, he felt a stab of pain in his heart. It was precisely because his past, in her eyes, was a male whore's past. He didn't even have the qualifications to be jealous or angry. He was angry, but he really couldn't get angry because she had seen his live version. If he continued to be angry, who knew where she would run off to? He wasn't young anymore. He had limited time to live, and he didn't want to waste it. That was it. Concho swallowed his pride. The waiter also served the dishes and recognized Kong Xiao. He even took the menu and asked Kong Xiao to sign it. Later, seeing that Kong Xiao was not arrogant, the boss came over and asked for a photo. End of chapters. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 41:30. Kong Xiao stood there, watching Sumo snicker. He reached out and grabbed Sumo, placing her in front of him. My wife. The boss's eyes lit up even more, and he brought his 18 waiters to take a photo with the big star. Sumo was unwilling, because this kind of photo would definitely be hung on the wall to attract customers. If she took such an obvious photo, how could she live in this neighborhood in the future? She wanted to escape, but she was very small, and Kong Xiao trapped her in his arms with one hand. His body was very hot, and it was very easy for him to hold her with one hand. Sumo had to admit that it was not a small pleasure to lean against his tall and sturdy body. She simply leaned against him, but she didn't expect that Kong Xiao would be even more shameless. He put his hands around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder, which was an extremely intimate position. Sumo struggled a little, but he refused to let go and even chuckled. Mrs. Kong, pay attention to the camera. In the end, the photo was of her looking at him from the side, and he was also looking at her. Very, very, very loving. The boss was very satisfied and said that he would wash dozens of photos and hang them everywhere. Sumo was so embarrassed that she had already gone to eat in silence. Kong Xiao sat opposite her. Are you thinking about moving? How did you know? Sumo cut him off and glared at him. Kong Xiao laughed. My place is quite spacious, and I don't know if someone would do me the honor. I don't want to live with a man, she said in a small voice. Kong Xiao heard it and then asked, what about marriage? Would that be better? She couldn't bear to listen to it. How long have we known each other? Kong Xiao said slowly. It seems like many years. Sumo snorted. You think I'm small? Did I? As he ate, he took the time to speak very slowly. Did I make you think that I despised you last night because you're a small hun? I think I took good care of them. You were very happy last night, and they were very comforted. Sumo was even more frightened. Kong Xiao, I'm eating. He smiled and did not say anything else. After dinner, a group of people blocked the entrance, asking for Konkyo's autograph. Kong Xiao put on his sunglasses and politely said coldly, I'm sorry, I'm eating with my wife and we don't want to be disturbed. Sumo didn't know what to say. She couldn't say that she wasn't his wife, could she? At this moment, Concho took her hand and strolled around leisurely. Let's walk for a while before going home. She gritted her teeth. We should go back to our own homes. Really? He was still holding her hand. Let's go to the convenience store in front to buy something. She thought he was buying cigarettes. And he really did buy cigarettes. Something happened. Back. Smoke. Don't ask her how she knew, because after he bought the cigarettes, he also smoked 2 boxes of large condoms and paid the bill together. Sumo really didn't want to admit that she was his wife. She wanted to leave, but the entrance was filled with his fans. She suddenly had a bold thought. He was doing this on purpose, dragging her here. In the future, everyone would know that she had slept with him and used a few boxes of t-shirts. Sumo was infuriated, but no matter how angry she was, she still pretended to be affectionate as she leaned against his back and pinched his waist with both hands. Stop it, I'm paying. We'll do it when we get home. His voice was elegant and pleasant, and he was good-looking, charming everyone. Everyone understood what he meant. Konkyo's wife or girlfriend couldn't wait to go home and do it. When Suemo went out, she was furious and walked in front of him, ignoring him. He wanted to hold her hand, but she ignored him. Chapter 41:31. Kong Xiao was not angry and just followed behind her. Why are you angry? Isn't that how couples usually do things? Suemo asked him. Are we husband and wife? He looked at her and smiled. Aren't we husband and wife? We've already slept together. What are we if not husband and wife? He held her hand and played with it in his palm, not caring about the gazes around them. Suemo bit her lip. Are you trying to make it so that I can't stay here anymore? Is it that obvious? He smiled. Suemo gritted her teeth. Kong Xiao, do you know that you're a special bastard? Kong Xiao smiled. Really? I think I'm very considerate. For example, I know that you want to do it tonight. Suemo bit her lip. No, I want to. He pulled her to stand under a tree and pulled her over. She wanted to shake him off. Kong Xiao, can you be a little more respectful and respect other people's choices? Do it with me, or I'll find someone else. He looked at her seriously. Do you want me to find someone else? A lot of women. I'll sleep in this woman's bed tonight and another woman's bed tomorrow. Do you want me to be like this? She glared at him. He continued shamelessly. You've taken in so many people. Why don't you add me? Suemo, if you don't want to be with me, I'll let you see how I fall. He was blatantly threatening her. Suemo was furious. Up to you. You're so cruel. He smiled and pinched her face, his gaze indulgent and doting. Then, he lowered his head and kissed her. She wanted to push him away, but his kissing skills were too good. She was angry and anxious. She punched his shoulder hard and said in a muffled voice, You male whore. She was so anxious that she even said those words. Kong Xiao was originally trying to coax her, but her words inevitably reminded him of what had happened before. He let go of her lips and glared at her for a long time before saying in a low voice, Do you want to see how a male whore pleases a sugar daddy? His tone was full of danger. Suemo was shocked and looked up. He was smiling, but there was no smile in his eyes at all. It was full of bitterness. Suemo clenched his fists. Jiangzhua, you bastard. Bastard. I'll serve you once too. His voice was low and husky as he carried her horizontally. What for? Anxious, she reached out to hit him, but he didn't care. He directly brought her back to her apartment, closed the door, and carried her into the master bedroom. He found the tie at the head of the bed, fastened it around her, and put it over the head of the bed. Then he half knelt in front of her and took off his coat. His fingers stroked the buttons of his shirt, and he gently unbuttoned them, one by one. His movements were very seductive, comparable to a male prostitute. Even Suemo, who was used to seeing all kinds of handsome men in the entertainment industry, couldn't help but be tempted at this time. She licked her lower lip and stared at him. What are you doing? He unbuckled his belt and chuckled. What do you think? Suemo was so scared that he closed his eyes. I'm telling you, don't act recklessly. I'll call the police. Sure. He stuffed the phone in her hands and even dialed 110 for her. Then, he leaned over her body and began to plunder, saying while enjoying himself, Call the police. I've already dialed for you. Scream for help and tell them that Kong Xiao is raping you. Suemo bit down on her lips. Don't think that I won't dare to. He chuckled and bit down hard on her soft neck. The call connected. On the other side, a gentle voice sounded. Hello, this is the XX District Police Station. End of Chapter 1. That you're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.